Hard to believe that only 30 days ago it was summer and that winter won't start for another 60 days, but welcome to the second meeting in October, City Council meeting. As we return from a closed session, let me say that we met starting at 6 o'clock, that no reportable actions were taken. We reviewed with our attorneys and representatives two legal issues that are ongoing, and we were just getting an up-to-date status report on those. So we'll ask City Clerk to call roll.
Council Agency Member Lingle.
Here.
Rouget.
Here.
Durham.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martner.
Present.
Mayor Chair Szyminski.
Present. I'll ask Chaplain Rashad from the Islamic Center to please come forward and lead us in an invocation. Ask you all please stand. Chaplain.
Greetings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum. Peace be unto you. Aho. With Almighty God's name, the merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer, we, your servants, present ourselves before you, following in the purity of faith traditions, recognizing your oneness and acknowledging that you are the source of all good. O merciful Creator, we know therefore that you are the peace, and the true peace comes directly from you. We believe, moreover, that it is you who signals the intellect of the human creation, that the order of peace, harmony, diversity, and plurality, yet unity, and a system of codependency that we observe operating flawlessly in the cosmic order, represent the very pattern upon which human beings are to build order of peace, harmony, diversity, plurality, yet unity, and a system of inevitable codependency for the global community order of mankind. Bless us, therefore, Almighty God, with the moral will and the intellectual acumen to heed these observable evidences that you have placed in your creation for our benefit. And guide us, God, away from complacency and human stagnation to a responsible sense of social activism and dynamism that will prove to be unparalleled in human history. Help us, O God, to establish a world of peace. Amen.
Say with me the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. A couple of housekeeping items before we move on. We had two items on the consent calendar because we had thought they were routine. I've received, and I think all of the council have, more than 36 requests that be pulled off for discussion tonight. And those are the two that the realtors have asked us to speak about. What I'll do tonight is pull them off the consent calendar and take them off the agenda for completely for tonight. I'll ask the realtors if they would form a committee and make an appointment with our city attorney. He's here at least one day of the week. If you call and make an appointment, and if 4 or 5 of you would come in and sit down and air your concerns, because we did think that these were quite routine, and you've raised some things that we ought to consider. But that I'll announce what my intent is if the rest of the council has no objections to just pull it off, and those you can leave and go home and not have to sit here and wait till that item comes up. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in full agreement with everything that you have said. However, the public is here. If they wish to speak, maybe we let them. You know, we don't want to send you away without not expressing your opinion if you wish. If you choose to wait until it comes up again, please do so. But I think it is important to still have the open floor for whoever would like to speak on the subject.
Thank you.
I concur in this meeting, what we're talking about, housekeeping, this meeting may go a little long as usual, and I was wondering if we could continue the unfinished business of item 12 about the on-street parking of unhitched trailers also. because it's way at the end of the agenda, and I know there's a lot of discussion about that. So, or wait until we get until midnight and then continue it. Anyway, I would like to continue it also.
You would, oh, okay. How do the rest of you feel about continuing? You want to wait and see if we can get to that one? The comments that we all received on the email seem to be with items, the two items on the consent calendar. And, we could delay the unhitched trailer ordinance also if you want, but we may find ourselves everything going through quickly.
If we're going to continue things, I think it's important for us to give a date, even with this, with what we're trying to get off the consent calendar and not just postpone it indefinitely. So we should be giving dates here.
I'll understand. Shall we? I don't think we can put anything. We can't have a meeting with among the realtors and Mr. Pannoni, and then have an item for the meeting 2 weeks from tonight, because the agenda would have to be finished next week. So we would put that forward then to the second meeting in November for those two items. The discussion right now is: do you want to take the third item and delay it at this time, or do you want to hold that and see if the other items go quicker than we thought tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to try to continue. Not continue it, but continue the meeting. I mean,
make the decision later tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
That's item number 12?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The City Administrator, Executive Director status report, and any staff requests and announcements. Ms. Barcelona.
Mr. Mayor, Council, audience, and viewers, tonight's City Administrator status report includes one status report item submitted by the Lompoc Fire Department reporting activities for the month of September. The department responded to 261 calls, of which 4 were fire-related, 191 were rescue medical emergencies, and 66 other. And there were 40 overlapping calls during the month of September, and that is all I have to report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members' requests. The first is a request that a resolution be prepared and the City Council adopt that resolution in support of the Honor and Remember flag. Mr. Lingle, you had made the motion to put this on. Is there anything you want to say before I open this for public comment, or?
No. Well, I'll wait for the public comment. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'll open the public comment on the item before us. The item before us is a resolution that is prepared to ask the governor and to ask the federal government to recognize this flag and authorize its flying on the flagpoles with the American flag. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the item before us? If you would please line up so we don't spend a lot of time waiting for the next speaker. At least keep 2 or 3 people in the line and move up there. I'll ask you also to fill out a speaker card. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Frank Rube and I live in Lompoc. At recent conventions, both the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars rejected resolutions of support for the Honor and Remember flag. I have submitted evidence to that effect. The Grand Lodge of the Elks has also rejected support. Vandenberg Air Force Base Protocol Office will not use the Honor and Remember flag because of the unapproved status. Lompoc should follow the lead of these organizations. The American Legion has had several resolutions over the years to recognize veterans or the killed in action. The American Legion, along with other veterans and fraternal organizations, believe that we have one flag to recognize and memorialize our brave comrades who have given their lives in defense of this great nation, and that is the United States flag. for POW, MIA, because of a closure not yet. Both the U.S. flag and the POW, MIA flag represent those people. H&R advertises its flag that it is like the POW, MIA flag, which is not true. They want their flag flown in place of the POW, MIA flag. And of course, every veteran organization in the country will not have that. All purchases of the H&R flag are sole source purchases. Unlike other flags that can be purchased from any flag retail dealer, the H&R flag can be purchased only from their corporation. One citizen's comment: if the bill in Congress now, H.R. 1034, is approved, every post office, federal building, and military installation will be required to buy and display these flags. And the government will be required to procure them from Honor and Remember Incorporated at an outrageous price with our tax dollars. Follow the money to those who will reap the benefits by federal law forever. Do you really want to support this type of action? This bill was introduced to the Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties on March 16, 2009, and it has not moved. And for the reasons I think I just gave you, that this bill will probably die in the subcommittee. Now I want to talk about Lompoc. On September the 7th, the Council approved the H&R flag. On one of our most sacred days, 9/11, at one of Lompoc's most sacred places, the Vietnam Memorial in River Park, the H&R flag was improperly flown in place of our California state flag. Also, visitors entering the city from the north saw the H&R flag directly under the American flag. This is another improper placement. The really sad thing is, all flags could have been displayed properly and correctly if someone had really cared. It is incomprehensible to me how any government, whether it is city, county, state, or federal, can display flags in a disrespectful and improper manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Group.
Good evening. My name is Don Ramirez, City Council and guest here tonight. I also represent one of the largest organizations in the United States and nation, and that's the American Legion. I'm a son of the American Legion, and I'm proud to be that due to my father, who is a World War II veteran and Korean War. He also is objecting to this flag, and he has lost a lot of comrades and family himself. And we're not here to take any disregard from the families, but the American Legion has a flag, which is a gold star flag representing anybody who's killed in a war conflict. You also have the blue star flag. But then you have the #1 flag, which is the American flag. Every family who loses a member gets that flag at a ceremony. And that should be the only flag that should be honoring him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
Yes. Take me a moment. Mayor, members of the City Council, guests, thank you for allowing me to again address the Council and for making this meeting available via the web for the many supporters, Gold and Blue Star families, and founder of the Honor and Remember flag to view this agenda item live tonight. On September 7th, I appeared before City Council for the historic decision as Lompoc became the first city in California to formally adopt the flag, to honor those that now serve, and to remember those who have given their lives in all wars. In 2008, Mr. George Lutz of Virginia formed a 501c nonprofit organization called Honor and Remember. At our dinner on September 11th, we recognized 2 Gold Star mothers who lost their sons in Vietnam. These 2 flags were sponsored by the local Rotary and by the 5 cities VFW Post 2829. I can personally attest to the gratitude from those 2 families who finally received some recognition for their loss.
Over the past 6 months, Mr. Lutz has presented personalized flags in each state to families and to the state capitals. Much like the POW MIA flag was the idea of Mary Hoff, the wife of a service member missing in action in Vietnam. The idea for a national flag to honor those that serve and remember those that made the ultimate sacrifice was the idea of Gold Star Father George Lutz. When my son Derek was at the Air Force Academy for one of his projects, he met Mr. Newt Heisley, the designer of the POW MIA flag. He explained to my son that although there was opposition to the flag, they went over, around, and through those that opposed it because it was the right and decent thing to do. Mr. Lutz lost his son in 2005, the same year I lost my son. Since that time, we've had several more losses in our local families in this war. It is of utmost importance that we remember their personal sacrifice and those that continue to serve. The Honor and Remember flag is endorsed by the National Gold Star Mothers, the Gold Star Wives of America, the Blue Star Mothers, the Vietnam Veterans of America, and many more. Over 400 signatures were obtained in Lompoc alone to support this flag. The flags are made in the USA. Mr. Lutz designed the flag, filed a copyright, and signed all interest over to the nonprofit 501c Honor and Remember Incorporated. Our goal is twofold: to establish a national symbol of respect and gratitude, and to present a personalized flag to each family that have lost a loved one in war. I have again brought the flag that can be purchased and flown. That's this flag, the one that the city flew. The other is far more expensive. Far more expensive. It has to be paid for with the ultimate sacrifice of our soldier or Marine that has laid down their lives for our country. As a Gold Star mother, and to the many Gold Star families that are watching tonight, when we see a folded flag, when it's presented and put in our laps, we forever see it folded. We see it draped on a coffin, and that's how we see it. We love, honor, and respect our American flag, but this flag is something that we can fly and not keep folded. I wish to thank the Central Coast community for welcoming Mr. Lutz and his idea for the birth of a new flag to fly below the national flag and the POW MIA flag. It is our hope that Congress will mandate this public flag to be flown on designated dates, as they did for the POW MIA flag. Additional information could be obtained by going to honorandremember.org. Thanks again to the Lompoc City Council for your support, for honoring our military families, and for taking an active leading role in helping to pass this flag through Congress. I know it will have the same level of state support and success as we had in passing the Gold Star license plate in California last year. In closing, I would like to say that for our families whose sons and daughters and loved ones have laid down their lives, there is no closure. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, I'm Ray Trosper, and I drove up here from Riverside area tonight, and I'm a United States Marine, American Legion, Post 79, Riverside. I'm also a rider, motorcycle rider for the Patriot Guard Riders, and for those of you that don't know what a Patriot Guard Rider is, we do in that area down there 40 to 60 missions a month on motorcycles, where we actually do plane arrivals for our fallen heroes from Iraq, Afghanistan, and we also do welcome homes and departures for the troops that come and go and fight the wars. So the riders that ride in support of our fallen troops and the veterans from our past wars, the ones that I have talked to, all support this flag. I'm proud to be here in front of this council and this city today because you have already taken the big step and approved this flag. That, to me, it was very huge, and I really am very proud to be here for that reason. Now, a couple of issues I want to kind of clear up that's been brought up here tonight. These several years of a flag being brought up to conventions, VFWs, American Legion, so on and so forth. Those flags in the past have nothing to do with this flag that we showed you tonight. That flag was a veteran's flag, And personally, myself, I didn't like it because it looked like Lucky Charms with all the hearts and moons and stars on it. So it's been thrown out for several years. There's not going to probably ever be a veterans flag. But this flag here, and nobody in this room, I can tell you right now, can love Old Glory as much as I do, and these veterans that put their lives on the line as well. The thing about Old Glory is she's vague. Old Glory also represents the person in that football stadium that doesn't want to get off their butt and stand for the national anthem. Old Glory also stands for the people that want to, as in Arizona right now, with SB 1070, want to stomp on her and burn her in the streets of Arizona. So she's very vague when it comes to things. When we deal with the military of this country, when we deal with the heart of this country, we are dealing with the military, because the military is what made this country strong. And everything that's military should fly right to the top and never be taken down by anyone or pulled away from. And what I'm saying is that this flag, as vague as she is, this honor and remember flag brings everything full circle. You have the POW MIA flag. For years, people asked me, what is POW-MIA? What is the POW-MIA flag? They didn't even know what it stood for. This flag states right on there what it is, and it's personalized. And as Deborah has said, it's a flag that doesn't have to remain folded. Nobody's going to see your folded flag until they come inside your house and they see it sitting on top of the mantle. This flag is going to be flown to where they can see it, and they know that you have your family has paid the ultimate sacrifice. And you know what? I wear 3 of them on my vest. And the 3 that I wear is my own family, Jackie Trosper, who's on the Vietnam Wall, 27E, line 34. The second one is a kid from Norco High School that I knew personally that was killed in Iraq. And the third one deals with 2 Marines that were just killed just here recently. And this is where I'm going to end my story tonight to this council and you people out here in the public. These 2 Marines were killed in March. They were both from Yorba Linda, California. It was Sergeant Major Robert C. Cottle and Lance Corporal Rick Centani. Both of them from the same town, both killed by IED, and both killed the same day, same vehicle. It was the largest Patriot Guard ride I had been on because the father of Rick Centani was a police officer at Santa Ana 25 years plus, and Robert Cottle was a SWAT team Los Angeles police member, 20 years, and killed. I bought 3 of the personalized flags out of my own money and presented these flags at Newport Beach American Legion on June the 5th of this year. And when I was there, I had a good talk with the father, John Centani, the father of Rick Centani. And although I knew the story, I want to tell you about this Marine. He's 19 years old. He was returned to his parents the day before his 20th birthday on a tarmac.
Can we
okay, just one important point. I want to let you all know that this is the way we honor our veterans today. The ones that come home that died across there in a sandbox without their father and mother around, they get a T-shirt. This is the way we honor them. I think we can do better than that. I think the honor and remember flag is what speaks loudly. Now, about this Marine, what makes him important?
Please wrap it up. Because
Okay.
I've asked you to speak to us, not the audience.
Okay.
And
The one thing about the Marine that makes it important is, and you don't find men like this anymore, before he went to Afghanistan on his last tour, he tattooed on his chest, "For those I love, I give my life." You don't find men like this anymore. And you can see this on the internet. You can just type that in and type his name and you'll see it. So I submit to you that the honor and remember flag is a long time coming. And the last thing is, on the American Legion not passing the resolution, I wrote the resolution in California. I took it through my post, through my district, and to the state of California, and it was adopted by the American Legion, Department of California, at the convention, June of this year. It was voted unanimously, 16-0 in committee. It went to the floor. It went to a verbal vote, and was voted unanimously.
Thank you. And I appreciate you coming all the way up here. Did you ride your motorcycle up here from Riverside?
Not today.
Not today? Okay.
I would like to have, though.
Well, thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the item before us? Seeing no one rise, we'll close the public comment period on this issue and bring it back to the council. Mr. Lingle?
First of all, I want to say that I'm embarrassed that we had to bring this to the council, the full thing. It was originally meant for the consent calendar because it should have been passed without any discussion. This is something that I believe we are not asking permission to fly this flag. We've already agreed to do that. What we're suggesting, or we're doing, is asking the state of California and the national government to also adopt this flag. We're asking them. We're not telling them to do it. I think we should leave it up to the state of California and the national government to decide. We are sending a letter to them saying that we support it. It's a shame that a few individuals felt that their word is more important than. I have here a list of 25 congressmen and women in the United States that have personally endorsed this. There are other states that have endorsed it. There are other cities that have endorsed it. Yet we have a couple individuals that think that we should not just ask other people to support it. I'm in full support of it. I'm proud that our city was the first city in California to fly it. Even if it wasn't the first city, if it was the last city, I'd still be very proud that we did it. And I make a motion that we adopt the resolution to send the letters to the state of California and the national government asking them to endorse and support the Honor and Remember flag. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. Can we have a...
I'll second it.
We have a second on the motion. Now, anyone want to continue speaking to the subject? Ms. Martner?
Yes, I would like to ask a couple of questions regarding the public comment. I understand it was Mr. Grube that made this comment that we are flying this instead of the POW. My understanding is that is not the case, but I want to make sure that it is put in the public record that it's not a replacement. This flag is being flown below, and can we have a clarification as to where is it being flown?
The flag is meant to be flown below the American flag, below the state flag, below the POW flag. That's the intent of this flag. Mr. Grube, I believe, is correct that, and it was an error on the city. It was not an intentional omission. It was an error that it was flown, I believe, not in place of the POW flag. It was not intended. It was an error on our part. And if certain individuals want to bring some expertise to the city, I believe they're welcome to come and help us fly it properly the next time. It was an oversight. It was a mistake. Never the intent of that.
Okay, thank you. My next question would be regarding the price of this flag. As I understand, it's being made by a nonprofit organization, 501c. Is that correct? So there is no profit as.
I would ask Mrs. Argel to maybe speak on that. However, is my understanding, any proceeds from that go to purchase more flags for Gold Star mothers.
Okay.
That's where there's no profit that is being made by any one individual.
Thank you very much.
There's a motion on the floor. I will not be voting for the motion at this time. I regret a lack of homework. We only had the pluses before us when we approved this last month. I have to respect that this was presented to the National American Legion and was voted down. It was presented to the National VFW. It was voted down. I received an email from the Elks Club saying their board of directors discussed it and they asked us not to take this action tonight. And I think that we moved a little too quickly in approving this on this earlier in September. The objectives were certainly very noble. The indication, none of us agrees that we shouldn't support, show gratitude, show respect of those who suffered the great loss that's recognized by this flag. Many people, I think, their emotions are high right now because the flag was improperly flown on 9/11, and that may have been a poor date for us to fly that flag to begin with because of the significance of that event. I think we've moved a little too quickly, and so tonight I will not support the motion to sign letters asking on behalf of the city of Lompoc, the governor to reconsider and the state legislature to reconsider, and ask the federal government to approve the flag to be flown. Mr. Lingle has pointed out that there's 25 congressmen, but the bill has been in Congress for some time and it doesn't move, and it takes more than 25 congressmen, and for some reason they don't want to move it. So until we know more about the pluses and minuses, I think we've made one error. We've irritated a number of people with by flying the flag outside of the protocol. And while I apologize to those that are irritated because of it, there was never any intent to disrespect the flag, only to meet the noble purpose that's presented behind this flag. But I think we haven't done enough homework and don't understand this well enough to put the signature of the city online in asking the governor and the federal government to take formal action on behalf of the flag. So I'll be voting no. Are there any other comments at this time before we call for a vote? Ms. Martner.
I also do not have enough information. I just learned today that the American Legion did not approve of this flag. I don't know the reasons why. So I feel that I don't have enough information to make a decision here. And when you don't have enough information, do I abstain or do I turn it down?
You could do abstain or vote no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Durham.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank God that the men and women that gave up their lives for our society don't feel the same way some on this council do. I will be in favor of this. I don't care how we honor them, what little or how small, how large. We need to honor these men and women. And you talk about upset. My blood's boiled right now. I understand there was a mix-up in the flying of the flag on September the 11th, but how dare anybody attack the military for what they do and not honor them for what they've given up. I'll be voting for this.
I'm going to support the motion also. As Councilmember Lingle and Councilmember Durham said, we made a mistake on not flying it the way we were supposed to, but by God, we flew it. And I think it's a beautiful flag, and it does honor the people, and I hope it gives some comfort to the families that lost their children. So I am in support of this flag. We're sending the resolution to Congress. It's asking them to do it. It's not, as Mr. Lingle said, it's not, it may not happen, but at least we're standing up for it. And I think it's the right thing to do.
We've heard from...
Well, I would like to see if there is any information that can be given why why these two other organizations are against it. Can somebody speak on that?
I think we've closed public comment, but and if we open it,
I contacted some of the members, and it's my understanding that the reason that they were against it was because it hadn't yet been approved. Now, according to the Elks here locally, that's exactly what I was told from staff inside, that the reason they were upset was because it wasn't approved yet to be flown.
Approved by their organization? So why don't...
By the federal government. And
approved by the federal government. Okay, thank you.
All right, we've heard the discussion. We have the motion on the floor. Let's cast our votes. And that motion approves. 3-1-1. The next item, with the permission of the council, I'd like to take items 2 and 3 at one time. This is a proposal. This is a proposal that was made to reduce the council members' total compensation, similar to the way we reduced all of the other city employees' compensation through a combination of furloughs, reduction in benefits, and so forth. We have there's two types of compensation for city council members and for the mayor. One is a salary, and the other is an expense allowance for the use of the personal automobile in conduct of city business in county. We have one of them takes a formal ordinance and cannot be effective until after the next council is seated. The other one is something that we can pass tonight and have effective within 30 days. So I've asked that we take the two of them because I think all of us agree that we should take the same kind of a reduction. I have a recommendation for a different formula that I think is a lot simpler and could all take effect immediately. And it would be much easier to adjust or change in the future should it be warranted. And that is that, and I prepared some suggested mathematics, but to calculate this, but. Basically, right now, the council has a $600 a month salary and $225 a month for auto usage. The mayor has $200 a month additional salary, or $800, and has $112 additional automobile allowance. I'm proposing the same, the 7.5. We have a staff proposal to reduce compensation by reducing the salary and also by reducing the IRS rate that is used to calculate the mileage, and that is adjusting two different rates that are set outside of this city. It's in one case the salary is based on a schedule that is in the state constitution, and for cities of different sizes, it recommends that this be the salary. We're allowed by ordinance to set a different salary, but if we can stay within the formula that the state has prescribed for cities our size and still meet the our end goal, I would recommend it. On the other proposal before us is to reduce the IRS rate that's applied from 50 cents to 40 cents. That would require, if we do accept that, that would require us to have two rates in-house, because all city employees that ask for reimbursement for their travel would use the IRS rate. The IRS rate is generally recognized, and there's another way of achieving the same goal. If we were to take the goal of reduction of 7.5%, if you look at the sheets that I have in front of you, and establish leave the salary as it is, and just take the full 7.5% of the total amount out of the auto allowance, and reduce that based on the number of miles calculated instead of the rate, we can achieve the objective, and it's much simpler. It's effective immediately. It doesn't require us to use two rates within the city for auto reimbursement, and it doesn't require us to establish our own rate. Instead of using the one that is recommended by the state constitution. So I mentioned that now. We will open this for public comment. The bottom line under the proposals, under the staff report before us, it reduces the council salary by more than a greater percentage than it reduces the if my math is right, then it reduces the mayor's salary. But under the proposal that I put before you, it would reduce by the same percentage, 7.5% for both the council and mayor. I mean, are there any questions or comments right now before we go? Okay.
I have a point of order I want to ask our attorney. This goes off the agenda, correct? This proposal from Mayor Szymanski?
No, it's part of the discussion of this item.
Okay, but he's changing the numbers.
That's true.
That can be done?
That's an acceptable thing when you're reviewing the item.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll open this for public comment. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment at this time on the item before us? Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to the council. Any questions or comment? Ms. Martner.
I'm looking at your proposal. You're basically asking to reduce the mileage allowance, right? Which I totally agree with, because effectively I don't spend 450 miles a month going around the town, okay? And I shouldn't get paid for it because I really don't spend that amount of money, that amount of miles. After all, Lompoc is a small town, and I assume, I mean, there might be some trips, and I do trips outside of the area of Lompoc, but I can't really say that I'm spending 450 miles a month driving around on city businesses. So I do agree that we should decrease the mileage amount. I am in full agreement of that. I see that you have decreased the council by 165 miles, and you have decreased the mayor by 171. Is there any rationale why you decreased one?
The mayor basically has a higher allowance.
Right. So shouldn't the mayor have a higher allowance in miles, a much higher allowance? You're decreasing both of them, but by different amounts.
That's correct. The mayor is currently the auto allowance for the mayor is currently 675 miles a month. And I know that the mayor does have meetings in Santa Maria and does have meetings in Santa Barbara. This is all in county, much more than the rest of the council, and a lot of other duties that require the use of the automobile, which is why this was established back way back when. And I've reduced the total compensation by 7.5%, and then took it all out of mileage.
Okay,
Period.
I see. Right.
Just taking
okay.
it out of one place instead of, you've got a formula that has about 6 numbers, and there's a total at the end. By taking the amount of just one of them, Mr. Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I want to compliment you. I think this was well thought out. The end effect is what we were looking for. We felt I believe we've all felt for a long time that it was not right that the rest of the city was taking a cut and we were not getting anything. So the result that we're getting right here is now we're on parity. Actually, we're taking a 7.5%, which is, I feel good about this. And your formula comes out as 7.5% for both the mayor and the council members. Well thought out, and I compliment you on you, and I'd be supporting this. Thank you.
I discussed this earlier with the city attorney today. We could take two actions if you want to approve this. We could either, one, we don't need the ordinance at all because we're not changing the salary. So we could just don't need item 3. We could by pencil make changes in the item number 2 and approve it, or we could ask the attorney to go back and review it and make sure that the math is correct and present it to us at the next meeting on the consent calendar, which is what I would recommend. Mr. Durham.
Well, I too like Councilman Lingle. I think he did a great job on this one, Mayor. And plus, you kept from adding the workload to the staff as far as having a 40-cent and a 50-cent mileage rate. So we're standardized. So I'll second your motion. The mayor's motion was to have the city attorney view the numbers and bring it back to us at the next council meeting for approval.
In the consent calendar.
On the consent.
Okay.
Mr. Pannoni, any problems?
That's fine. Just want to make sure it's the 7.5%. Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. Let's vote the item. That passes unanimously. The next item is a report for information only, so I will not have public comment on this one. It's merely to accept and receive a report. Arlene Pelster, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This was a request from Councilmember Martner for a comparison of the processing time between the Sea Smoke Winery project in Lompoc and the Terravent Wine Company in Buellton. Staff contacted the Buellton planning director and went over the project with him so that our information would be accurate for you. We have presented exhibits, a complete chronology of the time that was spent on the Sea Smoke Winery project in the city, and additionally, the time that was spent by the city of Buellton processing the Terravent Winery Company. The basic difference in the two projects is Terravent was a project in a completed industrial area where all of the infrastructure was in place, and the Sea Smoke Winery was part of a larger development where there was no infrastructure, and the basic utilities and traffic and everything had to be reviewed environmentally, and the conditions had to be put onto these projects. When the next projects come in this industrial area, their processing time will be more consistent with the Terravent Winery project. I believe all the information is available for you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Ms. Martin, do you have any questions?
I have a comment. I read the report and I read all your dates and everything, and according to this report, Sea Smoke came into a location in Lompoc where there was no already a developed area. So they have to go through the infrastructure and study the traffic patterns and the basic utilities and so forth, whereas Terravent was already in an area that had been developed. So the bottom line, you're basically saying that we were one step behind in the, in the process, or one step earlier, not behind, one step earlier in the process, and that's what added on to that. And I'll take your word for it. I would like to have the city staff meet with the developer and the Chamber of Commerce, because at the time when this was brought up to the council was the developer that said, look at what happened. And also, I know that the Chamber of Commerce was here in presence and also were very concerned on how late the city or how long the city took to do this. So I would like to request that to bring closure and understanding in this case study is that the city sits down with the individuals that thought that the city permitting process in this case study was too lengthy, and and work it out. I mean, basically, we have to put this to rest. Now, there were two other things that were brought up by this developer. One of them was the cost, that the city, our city, was far more expensive than Buellton. So it was the length and it was the cost. And there was a third one, and I'm forgetting at this moment what the third one was, maybe. Was there a third one or no? No, it was just the cost. So can somebody comment why we were so more expensive than Buellton?
The cost that Mr. Davidson...
Mr. Davidson, I'm sorry, I keep saying the developer, my apologies. Mr. Davidson, yes.
Mr. Davidson identified was the cost for the stormwater prevention program. As we identified in the report, the City of Buellton is a smaller jurisdiction. Their requirements from the Regional Water Quality Control Board are different. They're on a different timeline than the City of Lompoc is. So requirements for the particular stormwater issue may have been more expensive. We did refer and discuss with the planning manager in Buellton that there was a requirement for the SWIP, as it's called. However, it is done through their engineering division, and they had lesser requirements on their project at that time than we did.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other comments or requests from council on this item?
I would like to ask one more question. Does the staff needs more than just me requesting that this meeting with Mr. Davidson and the Chamber of Commerce, or will it just happen? Because I do want to make sure that that meeting occurs and that this report is discussed.
Councilmember Martiner, if this is a council request item, then yes, your policy is a motion, a second, and a concurrence.
I'll support Ms. Martiner on this.
We have a motion and a second that staff meet with the chamber to review the results of the study. Do we have a third vote?
Okay. I will. It just I'll support it. To put it to rest, some of the rumors that have been flying around. I also wanted to thank staff for putting this together. I know it took some extra time, and I thank you for putting this comprehensive study together. And it's probably a good idea, because the more people that become aware of the differences in the two projects, maybe that will put to rest some of the rumors that fly around. So I'll support it also.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I want to thank the Planning Department for their report. And we'll move on to item number 5, the recommendation regarding the social host ordinance. Mr. Durham, is there anything you want to say on this before we call up the police? The big gun?
Well, it looks like the Pinewood Derby King is already up at the booth, so go for it.
That was second place, Councilmember Durham.
Yeah, but Chief, you're still number 1 in my book.
Mayor Smiskey, members of council, members of the audience, thank you for this opportunity to address you on the issue of social host ordinance. At the end of this month, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Deputies, UCSB Police Department, California Highway Patrol, Santa Barbara Police Department, and many other allied law enforcement agencies will expend tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars in an attempt to keep partiers safe in Isla Vista on Halloween.
Even with the added public safety personnel, far too often Central Coast residents pick up their newspaper on November 1st and read about tragedies that have occurred and lives that have been shattered as a result of underage drinking. Although this Halloween is a singular event, the scenario repeats itself weekly on a smaller scale in communities throughout the Central Coast. Officers are often called by residents who have had their neighborhoods disrupted by parties that involved underage drinking and the hazardous foolishness that far too often results in property damage, injuries, associated crimes, and sometimes even death. Underage alcohol drinking is a significant national public health and safety issue. Because of the risk associated with acute impairment and long-term health issues related to alcohol abuse, studies have found that although traffic accidents are the most visible public health risk, with nearly 33% of all youth traffic fatalities involving alcohol, underage drinking is also associated with violence, suicide, educational failure, and other behavioral problems. Nationally, the cost of underage drinking has been estimated at $53 billion, including $19 billion from traffic accidents and $29 billion from violent crime. It is for these reasons and others that Councilmember Durham requested that the City of Lompoc explore joining Santa Barbara County and other Central Coast communities by enacting a social host ordinance. So in general, a social host ordinance makes the hosting of underage drinking parties illegal and subject to either an administrative citation or misdemeanor criminal violation. The basis for such regulations has been findings by cities across the country that underage drinking parties jeopardize public health, safety, and welfare. It is widely recognized by law enforcement that underage persons often obtain alcoholic beverages at gatherings held at private residences or rented residential and commercial properties. The Lompoc Police Department routinely responds to calls for service for disturbing the peace within the city limits. Within the last 3 years, between July of 2008 to June of 2010, officers responded to 918 party calls. The proposed social host ordinance allows for administrative sanctions to be taken against persons hosting parties where underage drinking goes unchecked and levies a non-criminal fine for violators. If non-criminal sanctions are not effective, the ordinance provides the option for criminal prosecution as a misdemeanor for habitual offenders. In the interest of public safety for our community and for the welfare of Lompoc's youth, staff recommends that the City Council waive further reading and introduce ordinance number 1567, parents 10, the social host ordinance, adding chapter 9.40 to the Lompoc Municipal Code pertaining to the social host liability for underage drinking. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions from the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll hear from the public. Anyone in the public that would like to comment on this item, there is a recommendation tonight that we move ahead with this ordinance. Nick?
Honorable Mayor, City Council people, I'd like to first commend our police department for addressing underage drinking. However, I tend to be a little bit technical, and in reading the ordinance, there was a couple of things that I'm certain the chief will use the utmost discretion in carrying forward. But the definition showed a gathering where there are 2 or more youth under the age of 21, and that our department would have the discretion to dismiss the crowd. I understand that there would be many instances where that would be necessary, but I would encourage our police department when approaching a wedding, a baptism, a quinceañera, or any of the many other functions that we have, a chamber event, a nonprofit event, that discretion be used wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Anyone else like to comment? Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to the City Council. Mr. Durham.
I was going to get comfortable, Mr. Mayor. I thought you were going to say something. You still have to have humor. As most of you know, I've been very involved in this community when it comes to the youth in this community and alcohol and drugs. And I think this is an ordinance that will benefit this community, not only on the legal aspect, but also putting parents on notice that this isn't the thing to do. When Mr. Gonzalez talks about 2 or more, well, that's usually what it takes. When I was a teenager, I had to have a partner to drink with because I didn't like to drink by myself. So you're going to have 2 or more. And be honest with you, I'm not concerned whether it's at a wedding, a funeral, or otherwise. If underage drinking is happening, I want it enforced because I'm tired of this $15.3 billion deficit that we continue to pay every year, or over a 3-year period in this case, to alcohol and driving accidents. I mean, I could go on for hours about the statistics on drinking and driving in the youth, and that's not even getting involved in our age group. So I'm really happy that the police department has considered enacting this, and I would like to make the motion that we do take the recommendations of staff and introduce the ordinance of 156710, the social host ordinance.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second. Any further discussion? I ask Mr. Pannoni, with respect to the comment that was made, if from the public, if there is a wedding reception at my house or a baptism or whatever, and naturally there are kids as well as adults attending that, and if there is wine that's put out to drink. What are the responsibilities of the police before they can take action, and what has to happen before I can be charged, at least minimum, the cost of the police responding to that event? They have to have knowledge that in some way or suspicion that minors are actually consuming the alcohol?
Well, first it has to be a loud and unruly party. So if you have loud and unruly parties, then...
You don't know my family. It's a baptism. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yes.
I believe the reference is to one of the definitions, which is an assemblage, and the definition of assemblage is a party or gathering or event of 5 or more persons, of which 2 or more are minors. And then it goes on, such loud or unruly conduct includes but not limited to excessive noise, excessive traffic, obstruction of public streets, public drunkenness, unlawful public consumption, on and on, batteries, assaults, fights, etc.
Okay, well, I guess the point there that has been made, if there's excessive traffic, if just all my kids show up to a family baptism, there's going to be excessive traffic because we've got a large family. Is that enough then that I have concern that the door might be open, and I want to.
Well, without getting into a lecture on spirit of the law versus letter of the law, there are literally tens of thousands of laws that are on the books, and officers use discretion on how they enforce those laws. I mean, there's probably many of us in the room that have been stopped for speeding but not issued a citation. So that's an example of exercising the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. So we operate in the spirit of the law in the city of Lompoc with regard to different. So if it's a wedding or something like that where we can contact the responsible party and say, hey, make sure that the people that are drinking are over 21 and keep the noise down. If they comply, generally that's sufficient.
Thank you, Chief. The only questions that I had. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Let's vote on it. And that motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda. Another presentation.
Now I want to talk about marijuana. Actually, I'd like to thank Councilmember Rouget for bringing this forward. Mayor, City Council, members of the public. Just yesterday, United States Attorney Eric Holder said that the passage of Proposition 19 would, quote, significantly undermine the efforts to keep California communities safe. You know, the city of Lompoc, and Councilmember Durham has alluded to this, but City of Lompoc, through various programs and departments, including the efforts of the Lompoc Police Department, has taken a strong stance opposing the proliferation and use of illegal drugs and substance abuse in our community, as shown by the last item. The Lompoc Police Department has been actively engaged in the prevention and education regarding the perils and consequences of gateway substances, substance abuse, be it alcohol, marijuana, or some other substance, for many years. The investment in our community's youth through the Every 15 Minutes program, the DARE program, the GREAT program, as well as Lompoc Unified School District's Too Good for Drugs program, have served to encourage young people to avoid the use of substances that would make them less productive members of our community and subject to many of the pitfalls and criminal behavior associated with substance abuse. Now, Proposition 19, otherwise known as the Regulate, Control, and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010, is poorly written and misleading. Proposition 19 lacks any substantive provisions to regulate the cultivation, processing, distribution, or taxation of marijuana, but authorizes local jurisdictions to develop their own methods for the regulation of marijuana. Proposition 19 will have a tremendous impact on public safety. Some of the impacts are contained in your staff report, and I won't go over all of them because there were many, but some I'd like to touch on. One impact is that this expressly omits any definition of what constitutes being under the influence of marijuana. Proponents did not include a standard for driving under the influence, and there's no correlative tests between marijuana and driving skills as there are for alcohol. Therefore, a driver may legally drive even if a blood test shows they have marijuana in their system. This proposition also states that you cannot use marijuana while driving, but it makes it completely permissible to use marijuana just prior to getting behind the wheel. No driver over 21, including bus drivers, taxi drivers, light rail train operators, or everyday commuters, can be required to be drug-free while operating a vehicle under Proposition 19. This proposition also prevents employers who operate transportation companies or have company vehicles from requiring employees operating these vehicles to be drug-free. Companies won't be able to take action against a stoned driver until after he or she has a wreck and not before, opening up a tremendous liability question for employers. This proposition does not regulate marijuana as our society does other substances like alcohol or tobacco. Rather, Proposition 19 leaves it to the cities and the counties the task of individually regulating marijuana within their own borders. This approach will limit and not enhance California's ability to control marijuana. And there's been some that would say it would this proposition would not eliminate the need for illicit marijuana dealers, as a large segment of marijuana users are under the age of 21 and therefore will still not be able to legally purchase marijuana if it's sold commercially. So what are the proponents of Prop 19 saying? They say that legalizing marijuana will generate tax money for California. However, the proposition itself specifically prohibits a state tax or state regulation, and places the burden on regulation and control of marijuana to 478 cities and 58 county jurisdictions within the state. Each government entity would have to come up with their own regulation strategy and expend millions in tax dollars to establish those strategies and carry them out. Also answering the generating the tax money or saving money, Proposition 19 could place hundreds of employers, including public schools, in clear violation of the Federal Workplace Act of 1988, which mandates the necessity of a drug-free workplace. And it could cost California as much as $9.4 billion in lost federal funding, because you'll no longer be able to test people to see if they're drug-free before they are employed, which is a requirement for receiving this federal funding. Proponents say that Prop 19 will damage the drug cartels and criminal drug enterprise. That's one of their selling points. Meanwhile, the RAND Corporation, which is pretty well accepted as a good think tank, they conducted a study on this issue and said that drug cartels will move to California and operate with impunity, and associated criminal activity will follow. Anecdotally, as I was looking at this issue, 2 weeks ago, we had 2 investigators come to our department who were working a case, a cross-country case, and these investigators were from Kansas City. So I engaged in a conversation with these 2 detectives, said, hey, how are things in Kansas City? You know, the typical chit-chat. And they said, yeah, we can't wait for Prop 19 to pass. I said, really? I said, yeah. The word on the street in Kansas City is all our crooks are moving to California if it passes. And they weren't joking. We already know of 2 people who have moved here from Florida and are prepared to begin cultivating marijuana should this pass. Now, these people are not Ozzie and Harriet. They're not from Father's Knows Best. They typically engage in other criminal activities associated with their drug cultivation and distribution. Proponents of Prop 19 say that we will save money and make space in our prisons and jails by decriminalizing marijuana. And this is the fact that there are approximately 179,000 people housed in our California state prisons. 1,500 of those people are serving time for marijuana violations. That's less than 1%. In order to go to state prison for marijuana, you must deal in distribution of very large quantities, such as the 105 tons of marijuana that were seized near the southern border yesterday. Another important point has been lost in this debate over Proposition 19 and almost been missed entirely. Proposition 65, if you remember that, and most of us know it because its label is on everything, wine, cigarettes, you name it. Proposition 65 requires that potentially hazardous substances, particularly consumables, be clearly identified and regulated appropriately. Marijuana contains 33 carcinogens that are listed as hazardous under Proposition 65. So why do we want to legalize marijuana? Our U.S. Attorney General gets it when he said, we will act vigorously to enforce the Controlled Substances Act against those individuals and organizations that possess, manufacture, or distribute marijuana for recreational use, even if such activities are permitted under state law. Dwight Eisenhower said in 1953 that a people that values its privileges above its principles soon loses both. Therefore, my recommendation to the City Council is that they adopt Resolution 5679, Parents 10, stating that the City of Lompoc's position opposing the passage of Proposition 19, also known as the Regulate, Control, and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010, on the ballot for November 2nd, 2010, in the California state election. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions at this time of the Chief? Seeing none, we'll... Oh.
I can do
of course. Go ahead. Sorry.
You can wait. Thank you, Chief. I agree with your conclusion that Proposition 19 is poorly constructed and deceptive to the public. I also hear you on your concerns regarding public safety in our town. There is something that is not being mentioned here, and this is just for my curiosity. There are medicinal uses of marijuana.
Correct.
And I'd like to understand, and I'd like you to tell me what is the impact on public safety, on your law enforcement, whether proposition would pass or not pass to those specific cases.
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, the passage or non-passage of Proposition 19, how does it pertain to Prop 215, which established medical marijuana?
Yeah, how does it affect those medicinal uses of marijuana? How does Prop 19 affect it, and how does your department is affected either way?
Okay. Probably the best way to put it, very from the hip anecdotally, is should Proposition 19 pass, the recreational use of marijuana under state law will not be illegal, which means that either it's recreational use or medicinal use, it doesn't matter, you can consume marijuana. So it has virtually no impact to people who are currently using it for debilitating type of illnesses, cancers, things like that, and actually lifts they won't have to go to a doctor to receive a prescription, and would probably lift or remove some of the revenue that some doctors get from giving those recommendations for various and sundry things.
Okay, thank you.
So the second half is, if it doesn't pass, nothing changes with 215. It remains intact.
Does your law enforcement spend any time regulating the medicinal use at all?
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay. So that aspect of it would go away, adding, and I do understand the additional, okay, but just for the record that we have looked at all the cases, right? All the situations and the impact on all the situations.
No, I mean, we don't have enough time tonight for all that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lingle.
And Ms. Martner brings up an interesting point, and I believe, now that I may be expressing my ignorance of marijuana, but it may actually be a disservice to people that are in need of medicinal marijuana, because it's my understanding that medicinal marijuana is of a higher quality than regular on-the-street marijuana, so they may not be getting the needed effect by the on-the-street stuff, and who knows what it's mixed with. So it may be a disservice to those in need of medicinal marijuana. Possibly?
Are you asking my opinion?
In 5 words or less.
5 words or less. Most people that are getting marijuana from a dispensary, I can't speak to that because there are no dispensaries in Lompoc. I do know that people who have illegally obtained marijuana in the city of Lompoc, and the quality is street level quality.
Mr. Durham.
Well, I would have to admit that council meetings would be a heck of a lot more fun if it was, where I could just walk outside and have a nice joint, and then come in here and make decisions for the city. I'm sure you folks would like that, wouldn't you? Yeah. And plus, I'm sure that if you had an occasion in your home where you needed law enforcement to come and protect you, I have no doubt in my mind that as a citizen of the state of California, you would want that officer to have just smoked his joint when he showed up carrying the gun, the taser, and the baton. I'm sure you would be happy to have that. Think about it, folks. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, to have this even brought up as a possibility of passing or even be proposed. Alcohol, you don't consume alcohol by smoking it. Marijuana you do, and I don't know a lot about marijuana in the recent years, but I do know that contact high in Willie Nelson, so I know you don't have to actually inhale it from the joint to get some effect from it. So I agree. I'm in full agreement with against Proposition 19.
Okay, we haven't had public comment period.
Oh, I know, but I still have.
No, I understand where you're from. Is there anyone in the public that will open public comment period? Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on the item before us? Seeing no one rise, we'll close public comment period and bring it back here. Let me take a chair's prerogative instead of waiting till the end right now. If we were to amend the resolution before us in the paragraph, the bottom paragraph, now be it resolved that the council of the city of Lompoc believes that it is in the best interest of the city to oppose. If we were to amend that to add, and we urge Lompoc citizens to vote accordingly on November 2nd, is that exceeding our?
I'd rather you not.
Okay. Okay. Because the Lompoc can't. We okay. All right. This was Tony. You want to make your motion now?
Wait. Could we add to strongly oppose Proposition 19? No?
Yeah, yes, you could add the word strongly.
Thank you. I'd like to add that.
No, in the resolution. That's not the resolution.
My earring just fell off. I'm coming. I move that we adopt resolution number 5679 parentheses 10 with the additional word to strongly oppose Proposition 19. That's it for the ballot on November 2nd.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion before us. Is there anyone else like comments? Seeing none, let's cast our vote. And that passes unanimously. The remainder of the council comment period. Are there any other city council requests or announcements? Mr. Lingle?
In fear of being strangled for making another council request, I have a council request. This is probably one meeting later than I should have done it, but I would like to put on the agenda for our next meeting discussion of what we will do in the event Councilmember Martner is elected as a mayor. Last time we had an appointment process, it became less than a pleasant event. I'd like to see us put it on the agenda for next meeting. It'll be election night, but results will not be in yet, so we'll be able to decide, hopefully we'll be able to decide how we'd like to do this prior to the results of the election. It should eliminate any bias any one of us have. It'll be my opinion that we would just appoint the number 3 candidate for the mayor spot in that situation. But we'll just, I'd like to see it on the calendar where we can discuss that. So that's a council request that I have.
Do we have a second for that council request?
I'm out of here. I second it.
And I'll add it as a third to discuss it that night. Okay. Any other council requests? I have an announcement. If the public hasn't seen the announcement that this Saturday is Make a Difference Day. We already have 4 or 5 dozen people signed up to assist the Parks Department. The Parks Department has about 600 trees they want to plant next Saturday. If anyone would like to give about 4 hours to come forward and help plant trees, you can show up at 8:30 in the morning at either Adams Park or Riverbend Park or the walking trail, or you can show up at Beatty Park. Although they won't be planting any trees in Beatty Park, the headquarters will be there. Bring gloves, shovels will be provided. Bring a hat and sunscreen, and give about 4 hours and help put 600 trees underground or into the ground. And after about 12 noon, there will be a barbecue. Those that have participated will get T-shirts. That will be at Beatty Park. So it's a full day. It's part of a national program of Make a Difference, and I'm happy to announce it's being organized by our Parks Department, Cindy McCall. So have that on Saturday. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I took.
That's
I
okay.
answered before your.
I'd like to make a comment on your request, and then I'll have another announcement to make. Last year, that was done at Beatty Park, and unfortunately, the way it was done was that the trees were planted before the sprinkler system was put on the trees, and many of the trees died. So I would like to encourage our Parks Department to do it in the right sequence, because we did have a lot of trees that died. And I don't know what the logistics of this year are going to be, but I hope we don't make the same mistake that we made last year. It took about 3 or 4 weeks to get the sprinkler system going, and the trees were already planted and the trees were already dead. Well, yeah, but we can't count on rain, so that's my comment. The second thing is I'd like to make an announcement that the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation, in association with the Half Century Club, is having a Halloween event. It's called the Masquerade Fireball. And this event is happening this October 23rd from 6:30 p.m. until 10 p.m. at the Half Century Club. Of course, all the proceeds go to the fire station. And if you would like to get any tickets, please do contact Ralph Harmon at 736-1901. And I hope you can all attend, because it's a very worthy cause. Thank you.
Mr. Durham.
Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but we had a great time Saturday with the Pinewood Derby. We had the chief of police and the captain that I thought were going to go to blows at the finish line, who's first and who was last. But they were having a ball, and so were the kids. And I have to admit, Mr. Lynn, as tall as he was, bent down and saw the finish line, and I think he actually came in first, if I'm not mistaken. So, but it was a great event. The other thing I'd like to mention is we won't see you again until after Halloween. And I hope that each and every one of you, especially the parents and grandparents, take the opportunity to go to one of the safe and sane places. I know Foursquare Church is having their annual block party, and folks, it's all free. I know one of the churches has, I think it's Trinity, that has the trunk retreat, or a trunk treat, where the parents bring candies and it's all in the trunks of the cars and the kids just go by. But there's all kinds of alternatives rather than just saying, okay, Johnny and Sally, go down that street and meet me back here in about a half an hour. Be mindful that kids are going to be kids, and they're going to be running out in front of cars. And God forbid we have a child injured because we didn't do our part. But have a safe and sane Halloween, and don't let the brooms hit you on the way, I guess.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. There were 3 items on the consent calendar. I'm sorry, oral communications. My notes are all over that one. We'll open the podium for comments from the public. Again, I'm going to ask that you maintain a line there so that we can move right into place and keep this flowing. It'll be 9:30 before we get past consent again. Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Dennis Trimble. I serve as president-elect of the Lompoc Valley Association of Realtors and a resident of Lompoc. My mother taught me a long time ago that when you get what you ask for, you should just shut up and say thank you. So I do want to just real quickly say thank you for pulling that item 9 off of the consent agenda for this evening. We do look forward to meeting with the city attorney and talking about our concerns about those ordinances. And we would like to remind you that you have about 100 plus good qualified professional people to consult with if you do have real estate related questions and things that we can help out with the city. So thank you.
We know, we heard from all of them.
Mr. Mayor, if I understand the way the general plan item is set up, you're not opening the public hearing for anything except the zoning item, is that correct?
That's correct. We've dealt with the other items, and
So this would be the time if I want to talk about general plan.
That's correct. We have the EIR. Will that?
I thought the EIR was
all the
still
public hearings are closed. The housing element public hearing is still open.
That's right.
So the EIR is closed, so this is the time to speak on that issue.
That's correct.
Okay, I have a handout for you. I guess there should be enough. So apparently you have dealt with this before, this should-shall issue, and I'd like to take this opportunity to explain to you why I think a seemingly minor change in the wording of policies is actually one of the most important issues in land use planning. I'm referring to the proposed change from shall to should in many of the policies contained in the draft EIR. In land use planning and other areas of the law, shall is interpreted as mandatory, whereas should is much less strong, more of a suggestion or a recommendation. Should is commonly known as a weasel word. Shall is a clear directive. For example, the Ten Commandments uses shall exclusively. Imagine how different that document would be if you substitute should for shall. I propose somebody's going to point out that the Ten Commandments is a very old and routinely ignored document. So maybe a more current document would be a better example. Our California Motor Vehicle Code, in the section dealing with speed in front of our schools when children are present, your maximum speed shall be 25 miles an hour. Councilman Durham, how do you think things would work out for law enforcement if the code read your maximum speed should be 25 miles an hour? Further note that violations of that code carry heavy fines. There are consequences to ignoring the law. Previously, Councilman Durham correctly pointed out that the existing city policies using shall didn't deter past elected officials from converting lots of good ag land to subdivisions and shopping centers on the northwest of town. How did they get away with clear violations of their own policies? The situation is totally different now. The record shows there's a massive oversupply of both built and planned homes and retail and commercial available in Lompoc today. Back to my previous analogy, reference speeding in front of the school. Assume you were pulled over for doing 75 and a 25, and you tell the officer that you were rushing your wife to the hospital. He gives you the benefit of the doubt and lets you go, and then discreetly follows you to your destination at Jasper's, not the new hospital. At that point, you get a well-deserved citation. Your final excuse was, but officer, the speed limit sign only said should. Conclude, please keep your strong ag protection policies in place, consider your selections of words carefully, and remember the old saying, say what you mean and mean what you say. And finally, if you want to be wrong-headed about all this, please say that too, so that everybody knows exactly where you stand and act appropriately. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Hammond.
Good evening, Mayor Szymanski and fellow council members. My name is Mary Leach. I'm a resident of Lompoc. On August 17th, the council discussed agenda item number 2 entitled Code Enforcement Team Update and Request for Council Direction. This item had 2 parts. A was prohibition of unhitched trailers, and B was weed abatement and rubbish on vacant lands. The minutes from that meeting stated that the council approved the weed and rubbish abatement. Does not mention the few minutes of discussion and request by the council to include, if possible, the abatement of blighted foreclosed properties in addition to vacant lands. That request, however, resulted in this 15-page document plus a 1.5-page staff report, which is item number 9 on the consent calendar tonight, which is an ordinance which on first reading appears to initiate a new arm of the code enforcement team, which requires vacant property owners prior to default to register, pay registration fees, possible fines, any other deemed charges to the city. It assigns the already severely impacted real estate industry as the responsible party, subject to fees, fines, additional costs, as well as criminal charges for the owner's noncompliance, and even punishes the new owners, who are the only phoenix in the mix most likely to rehabilitate and revitalize any such blighted property, by forcing them to register, pay a fee, and submit to code inspection prior to occupancy if their house was on the market vacant for more than 180 days before they purchased it. Weekly inspections of defaulted properties, regardless of condition, written reports, monthly reports to the city administrator's office are just some of the other requirements. Mayor Szymanski, I disagree with your assessment of this item as quite routine. I still believe that our local government should be open, honest, transparent, accessible. New or changed ordinances or laws have no business on the consent calendar, where they can be voted on with the flick of a vote button as routine items without the benefit of public comment, oversight, and review. Finally, even though our city attorney's office might have drafted this document, our city attorney should have been the first party to advise you of this fact. A fact you should already know from your years of experience. I commend the council members who acted with this request to clean up and enhance our already blighted city. But it is reprehensible to enact such ordinances, laws, fees, fines, and regulations without public oversight. I thank you that it is your intention tonight to postpone this item to a later date so that we might discuss and consider it after public input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leach.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, I'm speaking on the zone change, and when I look out my front door, I see a fourplex across the street from my house. If I look the other direction, there's a triplex. My whole neighborhood is medium to high residential area, and I don't see why why you would want to change the zone to make all these buildings non-conforming when they're already, it's a higher density residential area. I feel like people that do have an R2 or an R3 and have nothing on their property, they're being robbed of an opportunity to be able to improve their property, to add an extra house in the back. It decreases the value of a home. It decreases my options as a homeowner. If I was to go to an R1 from an R2, which I'm at right now, granted, if it burns down, I could rebuild it, but I couldn't tear down my house of my own volition and build a better house there, if I was down zoned to R1. So I'm just asking that you guys reconsider the zone change in south side of Lompoc, H, G, all these areas. They're already high residential, and if your guys are trying to revitalize Old Town Lompoc, I would think that you would want people in those neighborhoods to be able to go to these areas. It's the main center of Lompoc. It's the only thing that's pretty much still surviving there. Thank you.
Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is Lynn Whittemore. I'm a resident of Lompoc. I want to talk about the trailer parking issue, and I really hardly know where to start because it's irritating at so many levels. You asked us to come before you, get information. You took it to the city. The city made a decision, and now you want to bring it back and say this is what it is. I think we deserve the right to hear what the proposal is and address it. I understand it's at the end of this meeting. It's going to last a long time. I'm requesting that you postpone it for a while until it can be put on the agenda at the front of a meeting, because you're going to have a lot of people here. We've got 40,000+ people live in this town, a handful of people that complained about a trailer, and that's not very equitable to penalize everyone in this town that has a trailer. Plus the issues of where they're going to go. There's not places to park them. There's not a business to park them at. You have businesses that park stuff on the streets as it is. I understand moving trailers can stay there. Does that mean U-Haul? Is that a moving trailer? What about the car trailers that U-Haul has? Is that a moving trailer? If someone has a car trailer for their own personal use, is that a moving trailer? There are issues that you need to adjust to, and I think it needs to be done. And I think now it's a timely reminder, when all of you ran, you all said to us, we value your opinion, we will listen to you, we will do what you want because you're the citizens of this town. But when you become on the council, it seems that you turn and you are a function of the city. You no longer represent the citizens, you end up representing the city, and we feel we get shortchanged on it. So I urge you to postpone this and let us all come here and talk about the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whittemore.
David Karaschiff, resident of Lompoc for 6+ years now. My wife and I live on the south side, and we've been coming to meetings for quite a while now. In regards to the zoning, again, like the gentleman before me said, we have numerous high-density residences all around us. We have one residence on our property right now. We are zoned R3. We take exception, my wife and I both take exception to the Planning Commission's statement that we did not do due diligence by not checking the maps. We went to the desk and checked the map. Map said R3, and now we're being downzoned with a 5-unit, a 3-unit, another 3-unit, another 3-unit, 3 units across the street, and the Planning Commission said that they didn't want a spot zone. So how is that not spot zoning? I would really like to know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I hope you guys can see your way to putting a little bit of effort towards helping them make it a proper decision. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council and attendees. I'm Ronnie Kokutner. I live at 216 South J Street. My house is currently on an R3 lot, and I'm here also with others who have concerns about this decrease in the zoning. When I purchased my property, I purchased it and paid the price for an R3 lot. Therefore, I should have the right to build on that lot, not have it later on changed to a lower zone. I think that all of us who have lots of that nature should be able to use those privileges as we paid for them. In other words, if you choose to decrease the ability that we have for what we paid for, who reimburses us for that? That will affect when we try to sell, because now what we are selling is a property that's no longer the same property that we purchased. So I think it's not right to make a decision like that without making sure there was input. And saying on that point, this issue has been brought up so many different times and tabled that you have, I would be surprised if you have an accurate representation of the people who had very strong negative feelings about this change, because even I sat here through the last meeting for nearly 3 hours only to have it tabled. So when you change an issue like that and table it numerous times, I don't see how you're going to get a good, accurate representation unless people are willing to just keep following the minutes and making sure, gee, is it going to be on tonight? If it weren't for John Lynn, I would not know that this issue was yet again on the agenda for tonight. One other item is I would like to respectfully submit that when people come here to represent their opinion, whatever it may be, whether you agree or you don't agree, and I'm speaking specifically about the issue raised regarding the flag, please be very careful when you make comments that indicate you are strongly upset by what is being said. This is our right. Whatever we have to say, we are entitled to say it, and please be careful how you come across, because it can deter people from telling you what you actually need to hear to make educated decisions. Thank you.
Let's next speaker, please. I'm going to ask you, please hold down the applause. Let's keep this moving. Otherwise, we've got items that we'll deal with at midnight, or we'll defer until next time.
Council members, ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Winchell. I've been in the real estate business here for 32 years and have been fairly successful at it. Some of these people here will attest to it. I drove back from Visalia tonight because Mr. Lynn called me and stated that this subject was coming up again. I have, as a lady in front of me, I said, or the gentleman in front of me said, I've done due diligence. I have gone before the planning staff and on our zoning issue. I have met with them, but I have not got any written confirmation of our status as what we're told. Although we were allowed to use our property now as it is, there is no guarantee that if we sell this property in the future, that the people that buy it from us will have the same privileges as we have. We bought this property in good faith and with intentions of sometime down the line being able to sell it. And I don't think the full economic impact has been studied by the staff of how much money a lot of these people are using. Because when we were looking around at some other pieces of property, especially over on the D Street area, there's a lot of people that haven't objected to this that have very good property that could be made into multifamily use that's going to lose a lot of money just because they weren't aware of it or they didn't know about it. And I think the staff should study the economic impact on these individuals, not only now, because our market's down, but in the future. Most people that own real estate buy for the future, and we want a future for our children. I want my children to stay here. I want my grandkids to stay here and grow up here. But if you devalue the property like some of this stuff has been done, it's not there for them. Thank you.
Mr. Lynn.
John Lynn, City of Lompoc. After the last discussion of this, I decided to bring back some more information for the council. As they mentioned, I mailed out postcards with regard to this meeting because it was clear to me, talking to people, they had no idea how many continuances this has had. By my count, I believe this is the 11th time people have been expected to show up and defend their property rights. Of the 190 postcards I sent out, 48 went beyond the Lompoc-Buellton area, so it would require someone to commute here 11 times a distance of 50 to 1,000 miles. Some of them are on the East Coast. 28 of the cards came back using the list supplied by the city, so those property owners were never notified, and about 114 lived in Lompoc. It's been discussed that people did not realize when they made the purchases of this property how the zoning and the general plan applied to it. Prior to 2006, and somewhere in the middle of 2006, if you came to the city, you were shown the zoning map under the glass on the counter. There was no general plan map available anywhere, and it was never discussed. I purchased a parcel in a different area with the same result. I purchased what I believed to be a C2 parcel, and it turned out that I had purchased a mixed-use parcel, and I now have a pre-existing non-conforming use. So prior to 2006, people did not know what they were purchasing. In proof of that, I give to the council some documents dealing with 3 properties that were random properties that were approved between 1994 and one was in 2006 that were not required to make a change to the general plan land use. Additionally, the staff commented the last time we were here that if someone had a property that had these issues, that they would go out and look at it and determine if the construction was old enough and give them occupancy of it, and that is frankly not the way it's been done. Here are documents dealing with an address here in Lompoc. If you look at the assessor's documents that are attached, you will find that since 1950 the property has been assessed with a second unit. However, when the new purchaser bought the property from a foreclosure, they were unable to get the utilities turned on to the 2 houses until they disconnected the utilities to the second unit. And they were told that in 1950 it had been built without a permit. Obviously, permit information from 1950 is a little hard to come by, especially for probably the 5th owner. So what are some of the other impacts? First, you get out your glasses. Some owners have been told that their units built prior to the 1950s could not be reoccupied because building permits did not exist. If you were here in 2006, a lady testified that she had been told she could not reoccupy the second unit on her property. However, she went to her father's records and found the building permit from 1929 in the drawer, and that saved her. Properties purchased out of foreclosure lose their use. According to 3 appraisers I talked to, one of whom is here this evening to speak, if you've not yet built the second or third unit on your property, historical data indicates that you will lose approximately 25 to 35%. If your property is built out, it will be more difficult to sell because you're a grandfathered pre-existing non-conforming use. Buyers trying to buy your property will have to make a larger down payment. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac now require a letter from the city building department confirming the legal non-conforming use is permitted and it continue to be occupied indefinitely before they will finance a property. And you can't get that because the city will tell you, well, you have to prove it. Downzoning reduces property values. There's no question about it. Your financing options will be reduced and or you will have to finance your property at a higher interest rate, which reduces the sale value. Remember, the goal of downzoning is to, through time, using the codes, eliminate the non-conforming structures, and that is the goal in every city code. I also have for you some people who sent a response by fax or by email and asked me to present it on their behalf. I'm sorry I only made 1 copy of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Anyone else like to speak this time? Please, I'm asking you. Let's let the comment continue and not spend all our time applauding.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is John Thermos. I've been a resident of Lompoc for about 25 years. I'm also been an appraiser here for well over 20 years in Lompoc, Santa Maria, and San Ynez. First thing I need to tell you that just quite distressed that it's taken 11 different meetings to get to this point where we can actually talk about this. For many times this room was filled to standing room only for this conversation, but you continue to delay it and delay it and delay it to hopefully. If you delay it a few more times, you might only have half as many people here. And I don't understand how that could possibly be true. You're not serving the community when you do that at all. I also want to make a mention that that's the most important point about this downzoning thing, is that of the thousands of people that I've spoken to over the years about their properties and about values, no one has ever asked me, how do I reduce the value of my property? No one has ever said that to me. And I think rules like this, of downzoning rules, are something you'd see in a socialist country, but not in the United States of America. Thank you.
Next. We're going to take a break right now. We'll come back in about 10 minutes. And I hope maybe the applause will stop at that time, or else public comment period can be concluded. We'll resume the public comment period. Who is next in line? Dick?
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, I stand before you today as a private property owner of 220 and 224 South J. As you have heard from many other individuals, I also acquired a property, in fact acquired 2 properties with the intent of future development. And I understand the process and I understand what has happened, but I'm here to respectfully ask you to review the proposed zone change and reconsider it. I don't believe it's anyone's fault. Things happen. It was part of a previous general plan update, but it wasn't implemented. And just because it wasn't implemented is not justification to implement it today. It was part of an old general plan. We have a new general plan update, and so that affords us the opportunity to revisit that. But what I did is, as a private individual, I was asked also by my neighbor, Ronnie, who was a previous speaker. So I own a parcel, another parcel, Ronnie owns a parcel, and then the church there on J Street owned the next 2 parcels. We're all in agreement in regard to what we'd like to see on the zoning. So I think that only leaves 1 additional or 2 additional parcels on that particular side of our block. But what I did is I somewhat disagreed with some of the statements that were in the report. One being that one of the purposes was to preserve the single family nature of the south side. And so what I did is I went around this morning with my spouse and we took some pictures, and I went back and I labeled them per the maps that were in the item. And I may have previously done this, and sorry, I only have 1 set, but I've provided color pictures. The notation that I'd like you to consider on that is each one of those pictures represents a parcel that's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 unit property, one of those categories that all exceed what their zoning will be adjusted downward to. So it kind of helps you to get a picture of what you're doing besides just looking at a map. Here's the buildings, here's the houses. You can take that, you can look at the maps, and you can understand what you're about to do fully, rather than to see, a zone from an R2 to R3 that lets you see where there's a triplex and you're going to a single family, where there's a 6-plex and you're going to a duplex, where there's a 9-plex and you're going to a duplex. It helps you better do that. I also took the zone map when I was doing that physical survey, and I actually wrote in yellow how many units are actually represented on each particular parcel there. I try to get as many as I can, and I think it's pretty thorough. And then lastly, I'm not going to give you this because this is the only thing that I have, but this is a zone map that shows the parcels that I purchased as being R3. And this is representative from 2002. And so I think this is one of the maps that many of the people made their decision on. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Mayor, Council, my name is Stoll. I have some property here in town, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why the zoning change. Is it to create a problem for everybody in town and just the citizens, or is there going to be some money for the city here? I can't see that you're actually accomplishing anything other than give a whole bunch of people in town a big problem. What is the purpose of this? The rezoning, and everybody's up in arms about it, and I guess they're losing money. I don't know that I am. I probably am and don't give a damn. I'm pretty old. But I can't see why the city is doing it. That's it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'd like to have a couple comments about, I believe it's item 12 on there for the unattached trailers. I believe that this concept came up when Councilmember Marner asked the city to clean up commercial properties and to use code enforcement on and off the road so that they could do that. Staff members were sent out, the information came back, and much to her dismay, they showed that they didn't actually go after the commercial properties. The staff started attacking older vehicles and trailers and like that. Through the discussions, it has been shown or has been converted now that it's concerned about children's safety to have an unattached trailer. Today I was able to talk to several principals, firemen, and a couple of police in regards to the number of children that have or have not been injured as far as they can know and remember. And so far everybody said that it's not an issue. That would lead to the next thing, that if it's dangerous for a child to be walking by a trailer on the street, we remove the trailer. Wouldn't it make sense to teach the children to stay off of other people's properties and to respect it, rather than having the city go out there and pay $5,000 and make all these trailers illegal that are on the streets? I think it's our responsibility as teachers and parents to teach the children to stay off other people's vehicles. Because what would be next? To make sidewalks illegal, because at the end of each sidewalk there's a street that there's going to be moving vehicles on. I think moving vehicles are a lot more dangerous in regards to children's safety than it is a parked trailer on the side of the street. How is that going to affect, somebody had mentioned before, how is that going to affect the, U-Haul? He's got like 35 trailers on the street right now. That's a small business trying to get more money. That's not going to help him at all, I don't think. So it seems like it's a lot of money going out, and all it's going to be doing is making criminals out of people and vehicles, rather than solving an actual problem that could probably be solved without any money by telling children to stay off of other people's vehicles and respect other people's property. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you gave it. I didn't write your name down.
Garth.
Next.
Good evening, Mayor Szymanski, council members. My name is Christina McGinnis. I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Defense Center and the Open Project. And I just would like to comment regarding the environmental impact report, which analyzed the general plan. And in consideration of the change that you have made, the unilateral change that you've made to all but, I believe, 2 or 3 of the policies in the land use element and the circulation element from shall to should policies, and the need for a revisiting of that by the Planning Commission in accordance with the government code. I'd like to just briefly highlight some of the issue areas that were discussed in the EIR and the policies that were originally shall policies. I'm just going to read the numbers because it would take me a very long time to read the individual policy language. But under aesthetics, EIR section 4.1, it mentions that the following proposed 2030 general plan land use element goals and policies would reduce impacts to aesthetics. That's policy 3-5 or 3.5, 5.1, 5.4, 5.6, 5.7. Some of these are things like the city shall limit development on slopes of 20% or greater. Some of these are very important policies that are now rendered should policies. Land use element policy 1.3, 2.4, under air quality, another set of policies from the land use element that are purported to reduce odor reducing impacts from the general plan update include policy 2.2, policies protecting residential neighborhoods from encroachment by adverse or incompatible non-residential uses, land use element policy 2.3, requiring buffers, policy 8.5 under geology, same thing, regarding policies regarding steep slopes and associated hazards, Policy 5.6, Policy 5.7, Land Use Element Policy 6.2, Hydrology, also policy from the Land Use Element 1.3, 1.7, 5.1, agriculture and land use. As you all know, this is an issue that is of particular importance to me given my project that is designed to preserve open space and agriculture throughout all of unincorporated Santa Barbara County, since we're talking about unincorporated lands for Bailey Avenue. I would like to read a few of these policies because I think in particular changing some of these policies from shalls to shoulds has significant implications for future implementation of this general plan and the ability of the city to actually properly review projects that are coming before you in the future. Policy 1.2 from the land use element. The city shall maintain a compact urban form by delineating an urban limit line which establishes the ultimate edge of urban development within the city. You're making that a should policy. The city shall encourage development of underdeveloped and vacant land within its boundaries and shall oppose urbanization of agricultural lands east of the city and west of Bailey Avenue. That's now should. 1.4, the city shall encourage Santa Barbara County and the local agency formation coalition to plan urbanization within municipalities in order to protect prime agricultural land outside the urban limit line and to efficiently utilize public infrastructure. 5.2, the city shall protect prime ag lands east of the city and the west of Bailey Avenue. 7.1, the city shall assist ag support businesses to expand and or relocate in Lompoc Valley. 7.2, shall work with Santa Barbara County to protect agricultural areas from theft and vandalism. 7.3, the city shall encourage agricultural education programs conducted. The city shall encourage the use of sustainable ag practices. The city shall protect and enhance the flower industry and so on, also requiring permanent buffer areas. I just would like you to really consider the implications which are significant in the long term. This is a vision for your city to change those shalls to shoulds. Just to use Mr. Hibbett's example of you should go 25 miles an hour in a school zone. Please.
Thank you, Ms. McKenna.
And it does need to go back to the Planning Commission in accordance with the government code because it is a substantial change that you have made to both land use and circulation elements. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Mayor, council members. My name is Warren Culberson, and I'm an English teacher at Lompoc High School. And we just finished, or we're in the middle of, a unit called The American Dream in my English 11 class. And in that unit, we go over the speeches of the Founding Fathers. In fact, today we were going over the Declaration of Independence. And so it's pretty interesting to go over that language all day long and then come in here and watch government in action. And I realize how fascinating government is. It really is an incredible thing. And I don't envy your positions, believe me. But I realize, too, that this is a great privilege we have. It really is. And I just want you to know that you are thinkers. You have the capacity to solve problems or create them. That power we have given to you. And I would hope that you will be problem solvers, not problem creators. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Culberson.
Evening, Mayor, members of the council, Ralph Harmon. I don't think you're going to get to number 12 tonight, but maybe you do, but I won't be here. So I'd like to make a couple of comments on the ordinance about the trailers. One is in the first part of the ordinance, it speaks about the trailer not being left at any time. And I just think that's ridiculous. There's going to be times when you have to unhitch your trailer. You have to leave it there for maybe an hour or two, maybe 6 hours, but you'll come back and move it, and you'd be in violation of this. So I also resent the fact that this is being targeted on individuals and letting people who operate businesses that have trailers, they're allowed to park them any place they want, and that's okay with this ordinance, while an individual owner is being restricted. So, and what I resent more than anything else is the idea of the city spending $4,700 in signs to tell people that they can't park here. If we got $4,700 for signs for this purpose, maybe we better go back to that budget and start going through it line by line, because obviously there's a lot of money that was missed somewhere along the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Next speaker.
Mayor and council members, my name is Brian Segui. I'm also with Environmental Defense Center in Santa Barbara. I'm a resident of Carpinteria, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what we talked about at the last city council hearing and a couple of speakers have raised tonight, and that is the issue of Government Code 65356. And I just want to premise my comments. We're coming back here because we're very concerned with this general plan, and we think there's some very fundamental legal deficiencies in a number of levels. So this government code is one part of that, but there are various other fundamental issues that we've raised in comment letters as well. 65356, we raised it at the last hearing. I know there's some discussion afterwards where the advice was given that the changes that have been made from a should to shall don't require going back to the Planning Commission, and we strongly disagree with that. And I'm sorry, I have this on my phone here, but this is from a statement from the State of California General Plan Guidelines. It talks of policy is a specific statement that guides decision making. It indicates a commitment of the local legislative body to a particular course of action. A policy is based on and helps implement a general plan's objectives. For a policy to be useful as a guide to action, it must be clear and unambiguous. Adopting broadly drawn and vague policies is poor practice. Clear policies are particularly important when it comes to judging whether or not zoning decisions, subdivisions, public work projects, etc. are consistent with the general plan. When writing policies, be aware of the difference between shall and should. Shall indicates an unequivocal directive. Should signifies a less rigid directive. To be honored in the absence of compelling or contravening considerations, use of the word should to give the impression of more commitment than actually intended is a common but unacceptable practice. It is better to adopt no policy than to adopt policy with no backbone. And in this case, you've directed that basically all the shall policies go to should. So again, we urge you to reconsider that, to not certify the EIR tonight. And I've also been struck just listening to the testimony of the various residents tonight. I know that Councilmember Durham explained his reconsideration of the vote was out of concern for some of the property owners, property values, potential takings within those areas within the Bailey Avenue plan. And I think that's a valid consideration. You need to take the property values seriously. But I'm just struck by that there's this fundamental sort of shift in course at the council action to take, basically to respond to, I believe, 3 property owners' concerns. And tonight there's been 15 or 20 people that have expressed concerns about their policy within the city core being downzoned. So it just, the whole thing seems very, I just don't understand what's happening at all. Your general plan says that it has an objective to help restore the city core and protect the agricultural areas. But what I see with the policy now is you're opening up your best agricultural areas and sort of creating havoc within the city areas in terms of downzoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in line. Okay, Mr. Tripe will be the last speaker. If there's no one else standing in line, he will be the last speaker under public comment period.
Joe Tripe, resident of Lompoc for 40 plus years. I'd like to thank Mr. Lingle for bringing up the issue of Martner's seat if she becomes mayor. That's something that I was very much interested in, and I'm not looking forward to going through what we went through before. I'd also like to thank Council members Martner and Lingle. For the past 2 years, there's been a major improvement in the more open and inclusive Lompoc government. I'd like to thank Council members Lingle and Martner. For the last 2 years, we've had a better, improved public participation, and I can see that after the election, transparency will improve even more with the new spirit of public participation. With that in mind, perhaps Council members Martner or Lingle might be able to persuade Mr. Szymanski to answer my questions from 2 weeks ago when I asked why the Tuesday, June 8th Code Enforcement RV Street Sweeping Unhitched Trailers Workshop is not available to watch on the internet. Perhaps after oral communications, someone could request an answer, especially because it's at the end of the agenda tonight, which, no. This issue is on the agenda tonight. Why is it not available on the internet to watch like all other council meetings? Why do you have to go through a Freedom of Information Act just to get a copy of the meeting? It was an open, public, city-sanctioned workshop. And I would like to agree with the speakers earlier tonight, or one of the speakers earlier tonight. I'm kind of lost in exactly who it was, but they asked you to postpone the code enforcement issues as well as the code enforcement issues on the consent calendar, item number 9, vacant property registration. Obviously, the public is concerned about on-street parking trailers, and which is item 12. But so all these people want to speak and don't have to wait till 11 o'clock for the issue, or later for the issue to come up. I think you're trying to put too much in one agenda, and that's why you're having the public's a little bit frustrated. As for applause, which isn't on the agenda, but I just kind of made some observations. Okay, I personally don't consider it just disruptive. If it goes into 10 and 15 seconds, it's definitely disruptive. But if you watch, as the speakers line up over here, it usually takes about 4 seconds for somebody to get from here to here, and that's when the applause usually happens. When Joyce Howerton was mayor, applause was not considered disruptive. Somehow it became disruptive. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trice. It concludes oral communications. We'll turn to the consent calendar. We originally had 3 items. There's 2, approval of minutes and approval of expenditures. What are the wishes of the council on the consent calendar? Ms. Martner?
Yes, I would like to take out the minutes because I think they need correction. The minutes of the last meeting, not the special meeting, but the minutes of Tuesday, October 5th.
Okay, we'll pull the minutes and put that item on the agenda at the end of the meeting. We have 1 item remaining, approval of expenditures. What's the wishes of the council?
I move we approve the consent calendar, item number 8.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Let's cast our vote. Next item on the agenda is to continue our public hearing on the general plan.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a suggestion, if it is at all possible. I have heard the public, and most of the comment was geared toward the zone change. I would respectfully request that we put that in the front so the members of the public can speak, and let's be done with this, because they've been coming back here time and after again.
That was where we left off last time with map 15. I'm going to ask Mr. Lingle, since he had driven around and made notes on each of the maps, if he will take each map as he did before and lead us through that.
Well, I also like to talk about revisiting some of the maps that already have been approved.
And having heard much of the comment here tonight, I have a lot of reservations, so I would like to revisit some of those. I don't know when you want to do that, whether you want to do it now or after you're finished.
We'll go through all of them, and then you can identify which ones you would like to revisit, and if there's a majority vote to reopen those, we will. Mr. Lingle.
Okay. Actually, Mr. Mayor, I believe we ended up with map 13 last time.
Okay.
So on map 13, there are single-family residents except for 3. And there we have a fourplex, or actually 3 fourplexes. And on map 13, we're recommending rezoning from R3 to R2s and R1s. So let's see, we've had comments from 3 individuals, and those are the individuals that have the fourplexes on there. So.
Can you list the address, the city
I'm sure,
address?
Sure. Okay, the addresses for the fourplexes are 425 North D, 421 North D, and 417 North D. Those are all fourplexes.
I would also like to ask the city staff as to when those properties were purchased.
We don't have that information.
Well, I would like to have that information before any decision can be made. And the issue that I am having difficulties with is that this process is because we had a general plan update done in 1997. And today we are trying to make the zoning map consistent with the general plan update that was done in 1997. Why didn't we do this back in 1997, and why hasn't it taken us 13 years to get to where we are here today? I think that the property owners should not be penalized for a negligence from the part of the city to not take action on this. So I really, after learning what all of this is about, we cannot, our government should not cover something that was not done and that is taking us 13 years to get there. I think if it has taken us 13 years to get there, we have done something wrong in not having alert these homeowners that have potentially purchased these properties. So I will be opposing every downzoning that is being done right now, particularly to those homeowners that purchased the property between 1997 and 2010. Because in those times, the city should have alerted those property owners of the inconsistency and the illegalities, because I've been told that this is being done because it's illegal. So to be able to make my decision, I will need to know the purchase time of each of these properties, when they were purchased.
We were asked during the public comment period why we're doing this right now. I see the situation right now somewhat like the marijuana ordinance that we talked about earlier. Regardless of what we do in the state, the federal government has a law, and they are going to enforce it. Regardless of what the zoning map says, we had a general plan that called for certain zoning, and that is the higher priority. So what we're doing, and the reason we're doing it, is bringing it into conformance. It's like having a federal law that says that you will enforce the marijuana ordinance, whether you have a state law or not. They should be consistent. Having them inconsistent is causing major problems for police and other things in the state. I see the same kind of a thing here. And Ms. Martner is correct. We're trying to bring the zoning ordinance into conformance with the plan that is there. And that has the higher priority. And the faster that we can get to that, the faster we have only one plan to deal with instead of 2. Mr. Lingle? You have a recommendation with respect to?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll have a recommendation, but I agree with Ms. Martner. I'm hearing a lot about this, and I don't know if I'm ready to proceed. I can give you information. I'll probably be voting along with Ms. Martner against these downzonings. So I can proceed with the maps, but I will probably not be in favor of downzoning these properties. So, I'm not ready to make a recommendation on this then.
Okay. Ms.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way to go about this because, Ms. Martner suggested we go back and look at the dates all these properties were purchased, which I think is going to be a tremendous job, but I don't. I'd like to have more information on the quote-unquote down zoning and what that means. I know what it means, but I don't think the public really understands it. So I'm not ready to proceed with this either.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Pannoni.
Pardon?
Mr. Mayor, and to the council, maybe having some additional perspective on what the city is faced with will help with the council deciding what they want to do. If the council determines that the properties that currently are listed as needing to be rezoned, if they want to not rezone them to be consistent with the current general plan, and they want them to be whatever they're currently zoned, the only way to be able to do that is to amend the general plan land use element to put them back in a general plan designation that would be similar to or compatible with or consistent with the current zoning. To do that, we wouldn't be able to just go through each lot and figure out which lot should be made consistent with the current general plan or the zoning, or the general plan should be made consistent with the current zoning, because we need to be sure that what we do is, for lack of a better way of describing it, doing it in blocks or in similar areas. Not similar meaning similar uses, but similar locations. The reason we need to do that is because the law doesn't let us do it lot by lot. We have to do it group by group. So I'm not saying you can't do what you want to do. I'm not sure what it is that a group of you, that the council majority wants to do, but you need to understand that if you take the approach of not wanting to make the current zoning consistent with the current general plan, we need to step way back and go through the land use element and, in essence, start a lot of this process over again. Actually start and have the we'll have to sit down with staff and see whether there's some of the things that we've already done that we can still go forward with, like the EIR you could do. Maybe certain parts of the general plan amendments that you did on the land use elements and the circulation element amendments you could do. But we'd have to come back and reopen the general plan to discuss whether you wanted to actually change the general plan designations that were approved and have been ongoing for the last 13 years.
And how much would that cost? Because we have a consultant that is working on this general plan, and if I don't know how far back we go with this, but I think that cost is, I wish all of you would just listen for now. We listen to you, and I really wish you'd just be quiet for a minute. Because, the general plan, the consultants that are working on it, there is a budget. And being concerned about the budget also, I think, is important. But at this point, I know the staff has said that to me. We can go back and change the general plan. But I don't know if it's, the horse is out of the barn and down the road too far or not. I'm not sure about that. As far as cost goes.
Well, we have a majority that does not want to continue with this item tonight. So for now, we can just suspend any action on this item and and ask staff to come to us with alternatives, options for the future, and look at those and maybe come to us within 30 days for
Okay, 30 days is not reasonable.
Okay.
As was alluded to, the reason the consultant isn't here tonight, that we're running toward the end of our budget, so we don't have additional resources to do on that. If you do want to continue tonight, you can certainly do that. We'll follow your direction. Please continue to a date uncertain, because I don't know how long this will take, and I'd like to ask for some very specific direction from the council as a whole, so we can make sure that we provide the information that you need. Because if it's too general, we can't bring you back what you need.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a comment regarding the cost. How much did we pay this consulting firm to update this general plan and generate the EIR and the zoning map changes and everything?
Approximately $900,000.
So we paid $900,000 to generate all of this work that, in my opinion, is full of holes. I don't think we got our money's worth. Okay? And by the way, where did we get the funding from?
Ms. Barcelona, you may have to help me, but I believe, was it general fund?
Yes. That's correct. It was the general fund, Mr. Mayor and Council.
So it was general funds monies, that precious money that we spent lots of time in trying to balance and provide the services, the essential services of this city. It is those funds that fund our public safety that have been spent and were diverted in $1 million to update this general plan. And here we are today after 13 years, because this general plan that was the land use changes were made was 13 years ago, and 13 years later we're trying to make it legal. And this is where we are today, and I just think that I cannot support that. Also, seeing the decision-making that went in the annexation areas where it was discussed, a couple of things. One of them was about property rights, that property owners have the right to be annexed and develop. Well, don't these property owners that purchase a property that was zoned X, don't they have the right to preserve that? So here the council is being quite inconsistent in the decision-making, and I really bring that to the public attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Martner. Mr. Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I understand Ms. Martner's concern about the funding for this. $900,000, and it's almost all gone, and here we are looking at almost starting over again. If I'm not mistaken, and there's probably a lot of this general plan we can salvage. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, the last general plan, don't yell at me, last general plan was put together by a group of volunteers. The recommendation I'd like to propose to staff is that they come back to us with a recommendation as to the monies that are still available, and if, I guess I'd like them to tell us whether they recommend or if we could proceed with revising this general plan with a group of volunteers from our community as we did the last general plan. Getting someone from the agricultural community, someone from the real estate community, someone that understands zoning, and put together a committee and do it through volunteers like we did 10 years ago. That would be my recommendation to staff.
And I would support that.
Go ahead.
And how long did that take? Ms. Belster, to do that with a committee of volunteers.
Mayor Szymanski, you sat on the GPAC. Was it 10 years?
It was more than, it was 20 years.
Okay, because it predated my tenure in planning.
And it was almost a full-time job of 1.5 staff people, because that volunteer committee met every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks they came up with more questions, and then the staff had to work to answer those questions. And it was a two-year process. There was about a period of about 2.5 years right in the middle of it where the committee just stopped meeting because they really didn't feel they were making any progress. And then it was reconstituted and brought forward.
I understand that, Mr. Mayor, and that's why I'm just asking staff to come back to us with a recommendation as to whether it's even feasible. It may not be feasible, and in that case, we stay with the consultants. We may have to come up with more money to proceed with it, but I'm just not comfortable with where we are, getting down to the shoulds and shalls. We did this with good intent. We had just finished a discussion on economic development, and we were told that we're making it too hard on businesses because we are too rigid. So it was a recommendation, and I believe we all agreed with it, that, okay, let's be more flexible, and let's use the word should instead of shall. And now I understand, thank you for enlightening us, where in some cases we need to be more firm, we need to be more rigid. Our good intentions are coming back to bite us right now. So I'm very uncomfortable right now with proceeding, and I'm just asking staff to give us some recommendations on where we can proceed from here.
Okay.
Arlene, yes.
Yes, we can certainly come back with recommendations, and there are some options how we can handle this, and we appreciate you giving us some time to do that. As I said, in requesting detailed direction from the council, Councilmember Martner had asked for information on all the properties that are being affected by the zone change, information for when those parcels were purchased. One of you had commented that would be a big job. We're happy to do that. Please let us know if you want us to do that. One of you had commented that you want more information on the downzoning. If you could give us specifics, we'll be happy to research that and present that to you. And then Councilmember Martin, I believe, had indicated there she had observed some deficiencies with the EIR. While this has been prepared by a professional, it's been reviewed by our legal staff, and we deem it adequate. If you can identify those areas where you might like additional study or items added to the EIR, we can certainly see if we can work with a consultant to do that work.
Thank you, Mrs. Martin.
One of the ideas that was just brought up by the council here was that when we go and study the maps, we do this in blocks. And we don't deal with single properties, but we establish a block which will require that we revise the land use element, meaning revise the general plan. I would suggest that before we get into the details of any specific lot, let's go back to the beginning. And let's start looking at these blocks where the conflicts are. Okay, I mean, we did see pictures. You have 4 plexes here and 4 plexes there, and then all of a sudden a single-family home. I mean, I think the staff needs to look at, where the big issues are and focus on that, and then, bring that to the council, and then we peel the layers, layer by layer. But, the judgment is going to have to come from the staff that knows this stuff in and out. Short of opening it up to a totally volunteer, component, which, the staff should provide a recommendation whether that makes sense or not. But I really would like to ask the staff to sort of look at where the biggest issues are and where the inconsistencies are. I mean, right now it's just lot by lot. And yes, I do want to know when the property value was purchased, because I do not want to punish the homeowner on the negligence from the part of the government. I mean, there was, and maybe it wasn't negligence, that's a harsh word. Maybe it was just we didn't get to it. It took us 13 years to get there and tell the homeowner that his lot was being downzoned, okay? But we need to take care of that. We shouldn't blame and punish the homeowner for that. I mean, that's the process. The process that the city took was wrong. So that's on that. Going back to the EIR, I have a major problem with the EIR where there was a lot of discussion that went on during the Bailey Avenue annexation. There were 2 meetings where the issues of the buffer zone were brought up many times, where the issues of pesticide exposure to our residents were brought up. In fact, Mayor Semensky said that, we have been neglecting to do something about the pesticide exposure on the west side. He did say that. He said that that was, a big thing that weighed his decision. There is nothing in this EIR that talks about the pesticide issues. There is some comments, and I had a meeting this afternoon where after reviewing the general documentation, we don't have any documentation about pesticide exposures. So there is some general phrase being made there. That's not enough. If we're basing a decision on that a buffer zone is going to be what's going to solve the problem, that there is a pesticide exposure, this EIR needs to have it. I am not going to certify a document that does not have that information. After all, we pay $1 million for it.
Any other comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question of staff? Because a concern just came to me. Part of the thing that's before you to approve is your housing element. The timing of the housing element approval is upon us. That's not upon us because we want it to be, it's because the state has put it upon us. Is there a way that the council, and if what I'm saying is not going to be working for planning staff, please jump in. Is there a way that a majority of the council would feel comfortable, and I know you all wouldn't, so please forgive me for suggesting this. Is there a way that a majority of the council would be willing to certify the EIR in its current configuration and at least approve the circulation and housing elements that are before you, so at least we can get the housing element down the path that it needs to go? As an alternative, you could also actually approve the land use, circulation, and housing element and just leave the zoning not redone, which was apparently, from what I understand, what was done in 97 and 98 and 99. But understanding that you want to bring that back, but then when we bring it back to you, we can bring back to you the needed revisions to an adopted changed land use element and general plan, and at least be working from, and then we could use even that EIR and do an addendum or a supplement to that EIR. So at least we haven't unnecessarily spent the significant money that's been spent and not have anything, and we would have something that would be useful. It's not something that's totally finished. We recognize that, but at least it's useful, and at least it's a step that we could work from.
What are the comments from the council on the suggestion?
I just wanted to point out that we concur with your recommendation, either path. What I wanted to ask is if the council should decide to only certify the housing element, because that is a concern to us because we do have the state deadline upon us, could they certify the EIR only as it applies to the housing element?
We could make the record do that, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make council aware of that option if you felt more comfortable with
that. Do we need the circulation element to join with the housing element or not? No. Okay.
But we could certify the housing and circulation element.
Certify the EIR to the extent that it discusses the housing element issues and approve the housing element. That's what was being said.
Just the housing element.
That's an alternative, right?
I would. What are the wishes of the council on the recommendation that have been made for us? We have.
Well, I am willing to go ahead and approve the housing element, but then we have to approve the EIR with the certify the EIR and the
housing element.
Housing element. Okay. Well, I'm willing to do that.
I am not willing to certify the EIR, and yes, I would like to move on with the housing element, and if it can be condensed, because I just asked, and it's throughout the whole thing. So it's page 1, whatever here, and page something, whatever else, without having that in front to say exactly what is it that we're certifying tonight is very difficult to make a decision. Again, you know, we keep being forced to make these decisions out of this huge thing without really saying, is this chunk, is this chunk? So I would like to see the staff bring it back to the council at the earliest convenience that the staff has, and condense only the housing element for approval because we are in front of a deadline. But condense it such as that we can all read it in a reasonable amount of time, such as that the public can understand it, as opposed to 700 pages, you know. And I think that would be really useful, and then the decision may become clear to all of us. So I would like to see if we can, at a later date, bring that up. But I am not ready to certify anything right now with all the information and all the discussion that we have brought forth.
Mr. Mayor, as Mayor Pro Tem Martin was speaking, and another thing we need to think about is if we make significant changes, which it sounds like would be done to the housing element to the EIR in order to make it fit the housing element, we need to start the whole process over again. It'll be such an amendment to the EIR that we have to start the EIR process over again. An alternative to that, and again, I understand it wouldn't be acceptable to all of you, if there are 3 of you who are comfortable enough to certify the document that's before you, that at least gives us the groundwork to at least then be able to see if there isn't a majority or even all 5 of you who are willing to approve the proposed housing element. If someone doesn't approve or agree to certify the EIR, doesn't mean that they can't vote to approve the housing element. It just means they didn't think the EIR was appropriate, but they could approve the housing element if they wanted to, because the EIR has been certified. So that's another. Actually, I would suggest that only because of the timing and the effort that's going to have to go in if we do what was being suggested to the EIR.
I'd like to see that done too. I think I'm willing to make a motion to certify the EIR as it's before us, because I think that it gives us enough information to deal with the housing element as we go on, and we'll split the we'll split the items that we vote on, and the first one, you know, the only thing that we had left was the zoning, so I'll skip that one. We won't do the zoning, but I do think that the EIR is adequate for us to deal with the land use and actually the circulation also. But for the purposes of making the decisions, I'll move so that we certify the EIR.
I'll second that.
Are there any other comments or discussions? Let me ask, the EIR was prepared not by, or who was it that prepared the EIR?
Rincon Consultants.
The same ones that wrote the general plan?
Yes.
And they wrote the EIR, okay. We have a motion to certify the EIR before us and then move on and deal with the elements one at a time later based on the information in the EIR. Let's cast our votes. That passes. The EIR then is certified. Do you want to deal with the land use tonight, or do you want to come back and ask that is the one that's time critical. Ask that it be. Pardon? I mean the housing element, not the land use. The housing element. If that can be better defined for us as to what it means just to take that element, or do you want to try to do that tonight? Or would you be able to summarize the housing element, what we've got in there to just briefly? There are references in there to other areas. Well, those will have to be pulled out if we haven't approved it. You've got to have a consistent document. Is that right?
In the housing element?
Right there.
The housing element is the element that the state reviews, and that has been to housing and community development at the state level. There is one issue that we're still working with the state on, but as noted in your staff report, we are proposing to request that you adopt the element as it is before you, and there are the public hearing is still open, so we're asking that you continue the public hearing to March the 1st of 2011. And if you do adopt that element, we will then notify the state and send your resolution forward, which starts a 90-day clock for the state to give us a final answer on that housing element.
So if we do approve that one now,
it is
comes
something
back automatically for a review after the state provides their comments on its adequacy.
You're providing us with the ability to go ahead with that final document, and we would return to you if there were any changes to the element that were proposed by the state. If the state simply accepts it the way that the council adopts it, we would advise you of that, and then there would be no reason for it to have to come back except as a consent item for you.
Mr. Lingle, we'll start on this end.
When is it due that we have this turned in? What's our deadline?
The deadline was passed. However, HCD has been slow. It was in the summer. It was in July. The HCD has been very slow with comments to the various jurisdictions within this area. And so you are starting to see jurisdictions approve their elements in this way so that there is a certified element.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Durham.
Well, I thought there was several of the council's requests that we give staff time to work and bring back information at a future date. So I'm not sure why we're even continuing on item number 10.
I agree with Councilmember Durham. I mean, I did request that the staff comes back with a more concise report, if you wish, only pertaining to the housing element. I also like to know, are we being fined because we're late? Is there a fine associated with being late?
There is no fine. What occurs is if you do not have your element adopted, can affect your redevelopment funds, and it can affect state funds that we receive.
And what is the economic impact of being late? That has a big writing decision on me as far as making decisions. How much money is it going to cost us?
It would depend on the amount of money that we would receive for our redevelopment allotment and CDBG funds.
Okay. Now, in your comment regarding that in the staff report, are you referring to your staff report on September 7th? That it says that you mentioned something that in your staff report, you talk about the land use element and the recommendations. What staff report is that? Oh, the one for tonight? Not the one on September 7th?
If you're You're asking regarding the housing element?
Right, correct.
The first, yes, the first staff report that came forward to the council on September 7th.
Okay,
has
so I'm
the
correct.
analysis.
It is. I have the September 7th staff report to me. Where are you specifically saying that the housing element and the recommendation that the staff is making? What page?
I'll get it. There is also discussion of the housing element in the September staff report on page 26.
Yeah, okay, the beginning of it.
I have something to say. She's still talking. Just for the people here, the housing element is not 700 pages, it's 181 pages in the general plan. This is the big notebook we work with here, and part of that is the housing element. The housing element is 181 pages, and it has to do with what state guidelines, what they're saying, how many housing units we have to have available at certain income levels, and it's a very technical piece of the general plan. But it has to do with what is required by the state and our allotment we have to provide for. And as I say, it's 181 pages, so it's not 700.
Let me also clarify something else. Councilman Martner asked if there's a fine for not having it met by a certain date or approved by a certain date. I've seen bills over the last dozen years at the state level for other subjects, transportation funding, and it was written into the bill that the money would only go to those communities that have an approved land use element. It could be. It was proposed, I believe, once for libraries that some money could be made available to communities for libraries, but it would only be made available to those communities that have met the target date and have the approved land use element. So the state legislature tries to enforce. There isn't a specific fine, but they try to enforce through other things, and to estimate what it would cost us. I don't know what bills there are. Right now I don't see the state government giving cities any money. They're trying hard to take more money away from us. But that's the kind of thing that I've seen in the past with respect to the hammer they use to get us to submit the land use elements on time.
I want to make a motion.
Ms. Reject.
I would like to move that we adopt resolution number 5673, parenthesis 10, adopting the 2030 general plan housing element as recommended by the Planning Commission. And we will continue the public hearing for housing element only to a date specific that is 120 days from the date of adoption of this resolution, which would make it March 1st. Is that correct?
I keep saying land use, but I meant housing element with respect to what the state's going to enforce on us. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I'll second for purposes of discussion.
So you're referring to attachment number 4, correct? Attachment number 4, is that what you're referring to? That's the resolution? Or attachment number 3, excuse me.
Yes, number 3.
Okay. We have a motion to approve attachment 3, the land use, the housing element of the general plan. Any other comments?
Well, I do have a comment. You know, it refers back to the EIR all the time to the certified EIR. I voted against the certification of the EIR. The council told me that it would be that I could vote individually on the housing, but I'm voting on something that I did not certify, that I do not agree with.
You have the legal ability, if you want to approve the housing element. The housing element because the body certified the EIR. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that.
We have a motion. No further comment. Let's vote on that motion. Land use or the housing element is then approved. We'll ask staff to let us know when you can go back to us with recommendations on the rest. We have the next.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I think Ms. Pelster wants to say something.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We'd suggest that you actually have a motion and a second to continue it indefinitely and direct staff to return.
Right. Can we have the motion to continue indefinitely until
to continue to continue review of the land use element, the circulation element, and zone change
until we hear from the state, right? No.
No. It was just so the record is. It's just so the record's clear on what happened tonight, and so that.
So we. Yeah, I'm going to have to write in big letters, housing element, because I keep confusing the terms. Right. Okay. We have the motion as suggested by staff to continue. At an indefinite date.
From what I understand, the motion would be to continue till a date uncertain review of the land use element, the circulation element, and any zone changes.
And that would be after we hear from staff and after we put the schedule.
You're continuing it to a date uncertain for us to report back to you on the research and analysis you've assigned us tonight.
I'll move to continue it. If
I'll second it.
We have our choice. It's like coming to the end of the meeting and saying, can we have a motion to adjourn? There is no more business to conduct, and if we don't move the motion to adjourn, are we going to sit here all night? We either continue this or we don't. Nobody wants to deal with it tonight. So that's my motion. And that one, yes. And that passes. The next item is the proposed ordinance relating to on-street parking of unhitched trailers. We said we would wait till later on. Do we want to
Number
start
11,
that?
Item 11.
Stormwater quality management. I'm sorry. Stacy. I was just going to suggest that let Stacy hold just a second. By the time we get through with this one, it looks to me like we're not going to start the unhitched trailer ordinance because we will obviously not be able to do it. Can we turn loose the people that want to hear that by saying that this one will be deferred to another meeting? Yep. Okay. It's general agreement that.
So, Mr. Mayor, you're basically saying that we will finish this meeting after agenda item 11.
No.
No?
I'm saying that after agenda item 11, we'll have to decide on item 13 and on item 14. We'll also have to consider the one item that you pulled from the consent calendar. But I am saying that the item 12 is long enough that since there may be a lot of people here for that we can make the decision now before we go any further to turn them loose, and we will not deal with that one tonight. Is that general consensus? Okay. We will not touch the on-street parking of unhitched trailers tonight. Well, there was at that time it wasn't the full agreement of the council. The suggestion was let's wait till later, right? Okay, Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm bringing before you the consideration of the draft ordinance 1568, parentheses 10, stormwater quality management, and that is a requirement of our stormwater management program, which is as a part of our permit through the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the State Water Resources Control Board. And basically what this ordinance does is allow us to enforce against people or entities that are polluting the stormwater and the storm drains. As far as the fiscal impact, the primary fiscal impact would be on the existing code enforcement program, and that would be in both staff time and some costs for pursuing any enforcement that the city chose to take on. With that, I recommend that the City Council consider the attached draft ordinance 1568 Paren 10, stormwater quality management. Number 2, hold a public hearing, and 3, waive further reading and introduce ordinance number 1568 Paren 10, approving the draft stormwater ordinance and amending the city's municipal code, Title 13, by adding Chapter 13.32, stormwater quality management. Thank you, and are there questions?
Any questions of Ms. Lawson? Mr. Lingle.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson. If you can, tell me the impact this will have on businesses improving their business or coming to town and opening up a business. What impact will that have on them?
Okay. The primary features of the ordinance that would apply to businesses would be any of those under section 13.32.090, which are the prohibitions of illegal discharges. There's a list of the types of discharges that are not permitted. And then there's also under B, and that's under A. And under B, there are those things which would be allowed under the proposed ordinance. And the ordinance also stipulates compliance with the latest version of the low impact development and hydro modification control guidelines that the city has, which were adopted by the City Council in September of 2009. And those are the ones that primarily govern new development and redevelopment as far as construction requirements and development of stormwater facilities on site. This is primarily something that addresses a person who is discharging pollutants into the storm drain system.
And pollutants are defined in this?
Pollutants are defined.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? No, I ask one. Most of the, you have under A1 or under A, you have 20 different items. Most of these, or many of these anyway, refer to commercial establishments only, but such as the washing of the water running into the storm from washing a vehicle. so a resident could still wash the car on the front driveway and not be in violation. But some of them don't say that they are limited to a commercial or residential operation. For instance, a leakage from a trash container. If I put my green waste, when I trim my hedge or when I trim when I mow my lawns, I more than fill up the vehicle, the container that the city gives me. So I put them in some old galvanized metal cans to hold them, so I can put them the next week. Those have cracks in the bottom of them, and there is leakage of that of the fluids from the grass or clippings or whatever. It leaks onto the sidewalk and then runs down. Am I in violation then of this permit because you haven't exempted that from residential neighborhoods?
Technically, as far as the Regional Water Quality Control Board is concerned, yes, leaves, grass, those type of things are pollutants. At a certain point, the city's approach has been to educate and to try and work with residents to identify stormwater concerns, because I think at this point a lot of people aren't aware of what is considered stormwater. There's also such a thing as prioritization, because there are some stormwater violations which are much more hazardous than, say, grass in the gutter. And I would expect that those things would be pursued more vigorously.
Okay. Okay.
I've got a question. So if I mow my yard and the grass goes out into the street, I'm in violation?
Technically, if it goes into the gutter, yes.
If I have a tree planted by the city in my front walkway and the leaves go down in the gutter, I'm in violation? God, we're really stretching this one, aren't we, dear? Yeah, now I know why you brought it up, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if I might, the practice is a best management practice, and in that case, I would suggest just sweeping. I understand.
Okay, I have no more questions at this time. Mr. James?
Yeah, Ms. Stacy? Lawson, I couldn't think of your last name. Would you explain that this is not the city's favorite thing to do? That it was forced on us to come up with all this?
Thank you. This is something that is required by the state of California and by the federal government and by the local Regional Water Quality Control Board who is governing us. This is something that is consistent with state and federal law, and is something that, because we are currently under permit, which is required by the state, they could fine us if they find pollutants in our municipality. And as a result, some of those fines could be pretty steep. If we don't have a means to encourage people, in addition to education and, notices and letters, to comply, if you had a repeat offender, etc., we would have our hands tied as far as trying to solve the problem of what the state and federal government are requiring of us.
Okay. We've got Stacey, another question, if you will, Mr. Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. When we first discussed this, I believe we were looking at the county of Ventura that had a more conservative approach. Have we adopted portions of the Ventura County program in this, or what have we done with that? Because it seems like that was much more user-friendly.
Okay. This is actually a separate document. That was adopted by the City Council last September, and it has stayed static. We have not recommended any changes to the guidelines at this time. And those guidelines are referenced in the ordinance that compliance with the current set of guidelines is required. But we're not changing those guidelines, and we did adopt the guidelines from Ventura.
Thank you.
On now rather than later. We will be talking about an unhitched trailer ordinance. We will be talking about motorhomes, camper vehicles parked on the street. And as part of the attempt to beautify the city, that there's from a lot of sources there's pressure to ban those from parking on the street. If someone wanted to put in a storage area and charge them, charge people to put their motorhomes or their trailers on that storage area, would they be able to do so, or would this come into play so that any water that runs off the storage area that might pick up oil or droppings from the vehicles would cause that business to be unable to operate? I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
I think I understand what you're saying. I can't go so far as to say it would cause the business to be unable to operate. It would depend specifically on the site. It wouldn't have to do so much with this ordinance, but with the Ventura standards that we adopted previously. In the past, what our practice has been is to require that, for example, if they are regrading a site or if they are fully reconstructing a parking lot, that they grade it to an area where you could put a stormwater filter in, and that has an oil and packet that picks up the oil from the stormwater, and then the stormwater that goes into the storm drains are much cleaner. And so that might be a requirement on a new proposal.
The old Vaughn Shopping Center on West Ocean, we're building the Dewey Center, and we will repave that and probably landscape it better than it is now, which is some change, and we will put in new lighting. Would that be enough of a change that would require a stormwater holding area and filter to
offhand, filters, that project has already gone through and been conditioned, and if I'm recalling correctly, it was conditioned to provide for filters, to provide the downspouts to go to landscaping.
Okay, thank you. No more lights lit. We'll close this one up here for now and open it up for public comment. Are there anyone in the public that would like to discuss?
Mayor, I would just hope that John Lynn, City of Lompoc, that the council might ask, just in a general sense, what would apply to businesses. Just sitting here talking, it would seem to me that a mobile detail service could no longer operate because they would be discharging into the street. But just in a general sense, it might be helpful to all of those who are going to watch this proceeding to have some understanding of what new hoop we're going to jump through, realizing that we don't have a choice, but this would be a good opportunity to just give all of us in the business community a little update. Thank you.
Mr. Lynn.
Terry Hammonds, good evening, Council. I have a question. La Prisma Highlands has a retention basin, and that basin is pretty much under the control of the Department of Fish and Game. So my question to the city is, what part would you play in that basin? Those are public streets up there, public drains to the basin. But and our CC&Rs cover what we can do with the members, but it does not cover what we can do with the public. And I'll give you an example of what happened recently. We believe someone came into the development, it could have been a member, and we believe they dumped sewage into the drain on Carrizo. We couldn't prove this, However, I've been monitoring it for a while, and after the rains, it's gone, the smell. But I could smell sewage in the drain. The sweeper did come up, and a short while after. But this is a condition that I'm kind of concerned with because we're responsible for cleaning the basin, not the city. But it's your drains that go to our basin. And that causes us a concern that the public could come in, contaminate our basin, or a member could contaminate our basin if they so chose. So that's a situation we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Anybody else like to comment at this time on the item before us? Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back. I don't know whether you can answer from here. Stacy?
Which one would you like me to address first?
Just the one about the homeowners association having responsibility for a basin, but the public streets feed the water into the basin. What is the
liability
penalty for noncompliance?
Okay, the liability, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Attorney, but it seems like the liability under this ordinance would go with the discharger.
Okay.
Could they find the discharger? Could they then charge the discharger for the money that it takes to clean up the sewage? Because when this happens, and it is not infrequent, the wastewater department comes out and cleans up to make the situation sanitary. And that costs money. And so those kind of things could be opened up for pursuit under this ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
I think it's important to remember that the city often isn't the initial discharger. It's just the city streets collect what comes off private property. Unfortunately, the federal government and the state government doesn't want to have to go think about all those other people that could be causing it, so they go after the city because the city is sort of one place that they can go. And this ordinance is to allow us to be able to go after the people who are really causing it.
Okay. Mr. Lingle.
Stacy, before you get to Mr. Lynn's question or concern, some residents have, people that own RVs, they also have a dump station there. How does this affect those homeowners? I believe those dump stations go directly into our sewer system. Is there an effect there? You know what I'm talking about?
You mean like a motorhome which has sanitary facilities within it and they want to discharge?
Yes.
It is not legal to discharge into the storm drain. There are legal places in town that you can discharge. There, I believe, is one at the, actually there's maybe one at the Elks, one at River Park, and I think maybe one at Wastewater.
Okay. So a personal residence, because I know there are some personal residents that have the little stations, they are not allowed to use those.
If they're connected to the sanitary sewer, I wouldn't comment to them. If they're connected to the storm drain, no, that wouldn't be allowable.
Okay. Okay.
What are the wishes of the council?
In addressing Mr. Lynn's question, in the short term, yes, the mobile washers and any stationary washers may be affected. There are now products that you can purchase where basically it's bermed and you drive the car onto it, you wash the car, you drive the car off of it, it collects the material, and there are also washing facilities, power washers and those kind of things that then take that water, filter it, and reuse it. And they're still mobile, so you can move it from place to place. There are other means of depending upon the location, blocking your storm drain, collecting the water, and carrying it off and properly disposing of it down the sanitary sewer.
Thank you. Mr. Lynn suggested that we summarize the things, but they're listed and you can read them, and I would suggest everybody read them. There's one in here, for instance, that says that it's not a violation to let the stormwater from your roof go into the storm drain if you have a downspout that takes the water off your roof, unless there are pollutants on the roof or in the downspout. There are leaves all the time on my roof from the trees surrounding the house. So I've got pollutants in my. Whoever wrote this, very careful to cover just about everything. But as you said, there will be some discretion or some. You're not going to go after the person that has the water running down from leaves in their storm drain. Maybe me, just me. But John, you suggested we summarize them. There's 20 different items here, and I think that people ought to read them.
I was going to make a suggestion that perhaps this information could be included in our utility bills. You know, a little brochure thing on discharging and what's legal and what's not. That way everyone will get it and they don't have to read well, they have to read it when they get it. But anyway, I think that would be a way to get in touch with all the households.
Yes, to the extent that we would be able to. The area for utility bills is quite small. So, yeah. But we do already have the information.
No, I meant a separate insert in the utility, not that little thingy on the bottom. Just a separate, brochure thing.
What are the wishes of the council? Do we have a motion? Bob?
I move that we accept staff recommendations.
Well, I second the motion, but if you do send out a little brochure, make sure that you say it's mandated by the state, the feds, and everybody, because you know it's going to come back and say city staff really did it to us again. And I hope you're watching out there.
We have a motion and a second. Let's vote. And that item's approved. This was the property located 113 to 115 South H was just a report and a public comment. Should we hold that one till the next time? Declaration of nuisance and weed abatement order. Adopting the resolution declaring certain parcels of property as public nuisances. That one I hope we could do rather quickly. Can we ask Chief States to summarize? This is exactly like the one that we've done earlier in the year, except it's the addition of a couple more properties, right? That concludes the report. Which one are you on?
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
We said we would delay that.
Mr. Mayor, could you hold on a second?
Pardon?
Mayor Pro Tem Martiner is asking a question about item 13.
Did you make a request?
In trying to get to as many as possible, I think that one will require discussion and probably then past the 11 o'clock hour. And there is no. We can take it if you want. But I was
no, I'm just wondering.
In the hopes of getting in the hopes of moving on and getting because we also had the item you pulled off the.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll make mine short. Staff is, excuse me, staff is requesting that the council adopt resolution 5672 parentheses 10 declaring certain parcels of property as public nuisance by virtue of weed growth and or by the accumulation of rubbish, refuge, and dirt pursuant to Government Code Section 39560 through 39588. The history with these 10 additional parcels weren't identified the first time we came before you with a resolution. So the only way we can abate the weeds is if you declare a resolution again. And out of the 10, 5 have already taken care of the weeds by just sending a letter to them.
Okay. Any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, I'll open it for public comment. Anybody in the public want to comment? We'll close public comment, bring it back to the council. What are the wishes of the council on item 14? Mr. Durham?
Mr. Mayor, I suggest that I'd like to request that we adopt the resolution of 5672, parentheses 10, in compliance with the nuisance.
We have a motion. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Let's cast our votes on that one. Written communications, we have none that I'm aware of. Oral communications, 2 more minutes.
Mayor, City Council, Joyce Howerton, Lompoc. You know, most of the people have gone home tonight, and I'm sure there's no one watching because they're in bed. But I just wanted to tell you how ashamed of this City Council I am. And first, let me thank Councilmember Bob Lingle and Cecilia Martiner for doing the work that needs to be done. But to sit in a council meeting where I've attended over the last 40 years, hundreds, if not thousands, and have a city attorney tell the council how to vote because you have the majority, and not one of the majority questioned that or blinked, but in fact just went forward with what the city attorney actually told you to do because you had the majority. I mean, if anybody was watching at home, there is no wonder people have no faith in this city. By your actions tonight, you should have known what you were doing. And you quite possibly shall get the city in a potential lawsuit. I mean, it was shameful. It was really shameful. And again, I would like to thank Bob and Cecilia. You did your work, and the citizens appreciate it. And to the council majority, what a legacy you're leaving this city. You should really, really be ashamed of yourselves.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Anyone else like to speak at this time?
Nicholas Gonzalez, resident of Lompoc here. Quickly, a comment regarding the zone change. In my following around the city and taking pictures, I noticed very little new development that would have overlapped from 96. So a simple solution might be to work in the opposite. It's just to see what was actually developed, because with the down zone, it's a less intense use, so you not have overbuilt. So you might very easily be able to go back and just re-undo what was done with very little additional environmental impact report, because it's not creating additional impact because anything that was developed to a lesser degree. So there might be a simple solution to that. To point out as well, there were a lot of other things on the zone change that weren't part of the old general plan, and they've been brought back. The DMV site wasn't part of the original general plan. That's a zone change now that's being reincorporated. The Pine Street where they moved to is being incorporated. So there's several other parcels there that were not part of the 96 zone change that you are considering now. So it's feasible to reconsider.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Anyone else?
Okay, this is the third time I've asked about this, and I'll ask once again. I'm hoping that, I guess I'll detain you for 2 more minutes. I would really like you to at least discuss it for 3 minutes. I want to know why you can't put on the internet the workshops, especially the June 8th workshop with the unhitched trailers being the subject of it, and we have an up-and-coming council meeting where you're going to decide this ordinance, but yet you have to go to the front desk, pay $10, fill out of a Freedom of Information Act just to get a copy. Just put it on the internet, and if there's some reason why you can't put it on the internet, I'd like to know, so that way I can think it over in my own mind, decide whether it's really a valid reason or not. I would plead with you, Mr. Szymanski, can you take a couple minutes and just, or at least tell me, I'll get back to you next meeting, I'm going to find out from the attorney or whatever. But that's it. That's what I took less than 2 minutes, but I'd really like an answer.
Mr. Mayor, may I attempt to address it?
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe that workshop was televised. Is that correct? Or was not recorded?
It was recorded, but not televised.
Okay.
It was a very informal meeting, not traditional, standard.
Okay, so I guess the question is, we have archives of council meetings. Is it possible to put that on to our archive?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I guess do I need a motion to request that we put that on the archive and allow people to view it?
I would like to make the motion, if it's needed, that let's put it on the archive, and from now on, anything that is actually taped, why doesn't it just automatically go into the website? I mean, I think it's a good way to keep the public informed. So my motion will move even further, that everything that is taped should go into the website. I would like to make that motion.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Any discussion on that? Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Council redevelopment agency requests, comments, and meeting reports. Is there any items or Mr. Durham?
Well, I wish I'd have said this earlier, especially since we had the Honor and Remember Me people here and it was on the agenda. But last Wednesday, I had the daunting task of going with Captain Deming, along with several hundred other people that are God-fearing, loving Americans, that honored Mr. Daniel Johnson, senior airman, who was killed in Iraq or in Afghanistan, serving our country. I just want to tell the families and friends of Senior Airman Daniel Johnson that our prayers are with them and their friends and families that are still over taking care of business.
Mr. Durham, any other council questions or comments? Okay, we'll pull the. Now we'll go back to the minutes that were with us and the changes that Councilmember.
Well, I would like an addition that was omitted at the very end of the minutes. It talks about the public hearing and the action with a motion and so forth. I made a motion, and I don't know if it was after the written communications. I actually made a motion during the Council Development Agency request to revisit the shalls and the shoulds. And this is being omitted in the minutes, and I do know that I did that. The motion died on the floor, but I made the request that we revisit a discussion regarding the shalls and the should. And that needs to go in this record.
Okay, can we... Can we ask then that the tape be reviewed, and if that's so, then it be the minutes be amended and they come back to us for approval at the next meeting?
Yes, this can be done.
Okay. Is that acceptable?
Yes, that's acceptable.
Then that concludes the items on our agenda.
What about the September 21st minutes? Was that the September 21st minutes were okay?
I only pulled out the regular meeting. I did not pull out the special meeting.
We still need a motion. There was only a motion on item 8. We didn't have a motion for We need to have a motion to approve the September 21st minutes.
Oh, okay.
I so move.
I second.
We have a motion for the September 1st meeting. Those in favor say aye. The motion carries unanimously. No other business. We will consider this meeting concluded.